The time is 7:31. I call the December 3rd meeting of Yardley Borough Council to order. Please stand for the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Patty.
Okay, Ms. Thompson?
Present.
Ms. Segal-Morris?
Present.
Mr. Applebaum?
Here.
Ms. Scherer?
Present.
Mr. Carlson?
Present.
Mr. Feiner?
Present.
Mr. Stump?
Present.
With 7 members present, we have a quorum. Oh, yeah, everyone, turn your microphones on, please. We'll move on to community announcements. This is the portion of the meeting where members of council first, and then the public can tell us about upcoming events happening in and around town. Any upcoming events or community announcements from the table first?
Yes,
Mr.
okay.
Applebaum?
Yes, I have received a note from Shirley Coursey, the Executive Director of the Gather Place. She is letting us know that on Sunday, December 8th, at the Gather Place Museum, from 2 to 3, there's a lecture called Bucks County's Role in the Underground Railroad. Seating is limited, so RSVP. And secondly, don't forget, this Saturday is the holiday parade, beginning at 3:30. And then immediately following is, I don't know if it's called Santa's Workshop or something like that, but that's in Buttonwood Park.
Excellent.
That's it.
Thank you. Any other announcements from the table?
Just a reminder that the benefit concert for the Yardley Community Center featuring RSVP Brass Quintet is on December 13th, a Friday, from 7 till 9 p.m. at the Community Center.
Thank you. I did put something on the agenda. I had a member of the public who asked me to read a letter about short-term rentals. So I put it on here to remember, and then she since wrote to me and asked me not to read the letter. So there will not be a short-term rental correspondence being read during this portion of the meeting. Are there any community announcements about upcoming events from the public? Hearing none, we'll move on to public comment. This is the portion of the meeting where members of public can approach, state their name and address, and keep their comments to 3 minutes per item. This is for items not on the agenda this evening. So if you would like to comment on a matter that is on the agenda, you can wait until that agenda item. Any public comment this evening? Yes.
Patty Kleiner, 45 South Delaware. I had a comment for, I don't know who is the sewer authority person. Anybody on the council?
I'm the liaison to him.
Okay. I live right next to the water treatment, and the odor from there is significant. And I've spoken to Carl about it, and I've spoken to the sewer department, and I want to know if you could address that. Do you know why it's so? Okay.
No, but I'll reach out to him and find out what they have to say.
Okay. All right, thanks. I've just asked a couple people, and no one seems to know why it's happening, so thought I'd ask today, since I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll look into it. Any other public comment this evening? Hearing none, I will close public comment. Next, we'll consider the consent agenda dated December 3rd, 2024. It includes 2 items: approval of the minutes dated November 19th, 2024, and certificate of appropriateness 24-27, 25 South Main Street, sign and Bollard. Does any member of council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Do I hear a motion to approve as submitted?
So moved.
Is there a second? Motion was made by Councilperson Segal-Morris, seconded by Councilperson Scherer. Discussion from council? Discussion from the public? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Police chief's report, please.
Thank you, ma'am. The monthly statistics will be provided at the next meeting. The only item I have tonight is that the auxiliary police hat and glove drive is going well, and it continues through the end of the month. So anyone who wants to make a contribution can do so over the next couple of weeks. That concludes my report, ma'am.
Excellent, thank you, Chief Kelly. You have before you the finance report dated December 3rd. If there are not any changes, it will be accepted by consensus. Okay, managers report, please.
So I have the manager's report. We had 2 right-to-nos in the past month, 10 zoning applications, 11 permits, 0 zoning hearing boards for the month of November, and we don't have our number in for the real estate transfer tax yet, so once I get that in, I'll let you know what that is. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Engineers report.
Thank you. We've issued our engineer's report to council. Just what we have done, on November 26th, we did submit the 2 LSA grants, one for the police department roof replacement project for the amount of $214,901, and the Darlington Road sidewalk extension design project for the $171,920. As a reminder, those are 0 match grants. This year, we did get, the grant announcements were made in the beginning of November. So, we'll see, if status quo, we might hear from them in November or hopefully earlier next year. It all depends upon coordinating with all their coordination of the meetings and, what they need to get together. Just regarding a project update for North Main Street Phase 3 sidewalk, Remington and Vernick did have a meeting with PennDOT regarding some of the comments. What we are doing is just updating a little bit of our design, making a interim resubmission, coordinating further with PennDOT. Once we do that minor coordination, we'll reset the schedule and coordinate with the Public Works Committee. And that concludes my report.
Great. Any questions?
On those changes that PennDOT wants, are they significant, or or is it typical
They're
kind of stuff?
They're just additional comments that were not included on, our previous ones. So we're trying to, they would like us to just work together on it to see if we can improve it. And so that's what we're going through and trying to update it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned to us that on the Public Works meeting that that PennDOT was I forgot what it was. They had like someone there at your meeting that seemed like the what am I trying to say here? The direction of it seemed to be based on resolving the issues as opposed to just what we've experienced before, which is kind of the kickback. This was
Correct.
So I was encouraged. I just wanted to say, Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, solicitors report, please, Mr. Griffin.
Yes, before you this evening's consideration to advertise a fee-shifting ordinance for the collection of delinquent accounts. Essentially, under the Municipal Claims and Tax Liens Act, you can hire a private law firm to collect basically outstanding real estate taxes and trash fees. There's also a contract that would be considered at the next meeting along with the ordinance. That contract would be with Portneuf Law. It would start upon execution. It would have a 2-year term that could be terminated with 90 days notice, or else it would extend for another 2 years. And essentially what this does, it sets the fee schedule for the collection of municipal taxes, and then they would pursue any outstanding tax liens and enter those against the property, against the owner if they're not paid.
Thank you. So we have before us consideration to advertise. Do I hear a motion to advertise the fee-shifting ordinance?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Motion was made by Councilperson Scherer, seconded by Councilperson Segal-Morris. Discussion from council? Any discussion from the public? Yes. Can you please come forward and just state your name and address? Thank you.
I am Marcia Child, 105 Lantern Court.
Welcome.
This is my first time visiting here, so I'm really
Thanks for
pleased to
visiting.
see it. how our government takes place locally. Just, I'm curious regarding those delinquent taxes. Is that something significant affecting our community? I'm wondering, like, what percentage? Is it a lot? Has it gotten worse?
So I would have to defer to, I guess, Patty on that as far as how many outstanding accounts actually exist. Go ahead.
Okay, so for real estate, in 2023, there was around 7. So we don't have the numbers for 2024 yet, so, for real estate.
So we still are going to go through our normal process, following up in-house, sending repeat letters and attempts before sent to collection, but we do have, several tens of thousands of dollars that we have not been able to collect, which to a small town is significant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments on the fee shifting ordinance? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. The mayor is absent, so we'll skip his report. Council member report, starting with Councilperson Segal-Morris, please.
None this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilperson Feiner.
Well, I think a lot has been covered. It's just good to see motion on North Main Street on the grant for Dolanton Extension and Judy's Garden, which should be closing by the end of the year, which is a great thing for Yardley. And we'll leave it at that.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Councilperson Carlson.
Excuse me, from general government perspective, been watching to see if the expenses come in like we forecasted, and they seem to be pretty much in line, so to support our budget assumptions for next year. So that looks okay and we'll be looking to approve a budget at our next meeting. And relative to this sewer, starting next year, won't be too long, probably in February or March, they'll begin the new sewer line project that's been in the works for years. And the sewer authority will be coming to the council probably in late January or February meeting to explain the whole construction process and what's going to go on. That's all I had.
Thank you. Councilperson Applebaum.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I have a few things. Number one, I mentioned last time that the Environmental Advisory Commission was doing a collaborative cleanup. So on November 23rd, which was just recently, they joined the Morrisville Environmental Advisory Council and Spearhead Project Earth, which is headquartered here in Yardley, for a cooperative workday at the Riverfront Preserve in Morrisville. Over 30 volunteers showed up and removed invasive species, improved public access down at the Morrisville Preserve, planted trees, and picked up trash. The Morrisville Environmental Advisory Council person, Debbie Colgan, was ecstatic with the turnout because of the collaborative efforts and the efforts of all above marketing. We're promoting this to people in the area. We had people coming as far as Levittown, if you can believe that, to help out. I will not talk about another initiative, Birdtown, until it comes up later in the agenda, but there are a couple other things I wanted to mention quickly. I've been working closely with Spearhead Project Earth, and a few of the initiatives that we've been working on, aside from the recent cleanup by the river and the War Memorial, is that we've become closely aligned with the Delaware Tribe of Indians, aka Lenape Indians, and I have been working with Elder John Thomas from Bartlesville, Oklahoma. He is currently taken residence at your Sinus College, and he has been visiting both Burlington Island, New Jersey, which is one of their projects, but also coming here for the reason that this is their home, their original homeland, and just trying to introduce them to the history and the attractions here in town so that they can bring others from Oklahoma to visit their homeland. I've also was working very closely, well, Spearhead, but also myself, working closely with Senator Santasiero on an initiative called Blue Zones. I was interviewed a few months ago to talk about our town because they were getting close to making a selection, possibly here in Lower Bucks County, Senate District 10, to hopefully to make this area a Blue Zone 2.0, which is the next stage in, historically they had other blue zones, and this is part of a new initiative for them. Blue zones, you may be familiar with the National Geographic special that discusses blue zones, but essentially, to sum it up quickly, it's areas around the world where people perhaps live longer and have more impactful lives because of changes in their habits. And I won't go into all the details now. But we're hoping, or at least Spearhead's hoping, to do a movie night showing the Blue Zone special from Netflix. And I believe that is it for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilperson Scherer.
Nothing to report.
Councilperson Stump.
Yeah, so 2 weeks ago, I accompanied the Yardley Shade Tree Committee, I believe is the name of it. They did their plantings for this fall, and I was able to go with them when we planted some trees at various places around town, 14 trees in total. To clarify, I did not actually plant any trees. I took photos of other people planting trees. So I was able to, do the work vicariously through them. But the reason why I did this, because I don't directly serve as a liaison to that committee, was as community outreach. I think something I've noticed just in living here for the past 7 years is that there's a lot of really cool things that we do in this town that I think people who have lived here for a long period of time just kind of know about and maybe even sometimes take for granted to a certain extent, because it's like, oh yeah, that thing's happening again. But something I've noticed as new people come to town, and I can even remember this myself moving here 7 years ago, like finding out that we had a parade when it was going past my apartment on Main Street. And oh wow, we do 2 parades a year. This is incredible. I mean, good grief, I would have. And after learning how awesome Yardley was, I very quickly scooped up a house and locked it in before COVID. So, but the feedback I've gotten from residents, new people in town, is that, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this stuff was happening. And it's been funny over the past years. I've tried to make an effort to communicate things through social media and other forums. Is sometimes even myself, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I haven't even gone to that thing to experience what it is. And so it was really cool watching the process, and the people that we have in this town are incredible. There's one of the people planting the trees actually does this for a living. Like, I even told them about when I tried to plant a tree on my wife's 30th birthday, and then it died a few months later. And in frustration, threw it in the trash, and I said, oh my gosh, if I would have had you guys plant one of these trees that I can get for free. I mean, this is like $500 worth of work of them coming and planting this tree that's further along than the one I purchased, and doing all the necessary things and then giving you the resources you need. So it was really cool to see. What I especially loved was seeing trees planted on properties where trees had fallen in the past, and even on the same sites where trees had fallen. So that the goal of we can increase our tree canopy in Yardley Borough. I had even made the recommendation to them that they reach out to St. Andrews, because St. Andrews had to take down several trees along Penn Valley Drive earlier this year and left a real big open gap. And so they actually took us up on 5 trees. And what I loved is I spoke to one of their volunteers at the church. He said that he intentionally had these 3 trees planted behind a row of 3 other trees, because the way the health of these trees are going and just the life expectancy, these trees probably aren't going to be here in 30 years. But by the time they go away, we're going to have another line of trees behind them. So I would encourage Yardley residents, this is free. You can get shade trees. They have cherry trees, maple trees, all the fun trees, and then also really big towering trees. If you want a 50-foot tall tree in your yard, you can get that. When they typically, they post on Facebook to let people know in the unofficial Yardley Borough Facebook group. I don't think we posted anything on the official borough Facebook this time around. We're working on things with communication and getting our ducks in a row there. Pun kind of intended. But anyway, I would encourage when this comes up to take advantage of that. Second thing I had, sorry, I've been working on several different projects today. The second thing, I was alerted by a few of my neighbors over Thanksgiving that the water hydrant on Cadwalder Court, which serves about 30 homes and also is an auxiliary fire hydrant for Yardley Point, the condo community is about 5 stories. That hydrant has been not functioning properly since May of last year. Between one of my neighbors reaching out to American Water and Manager Johnson reaching out to American Water, we finally got a replacement. They scheduled an emergency replacement for the week of Thanksgiving, which required turning off the water on Thanksgiving, having a backhoe digging up the street. I came home. Those of you who maybe travel that loop, you see the patch job that has happened. It does not look great. And I was able to speak with a representative for American Water this week. And the good news that I wanted to share is this is part of their process in case there's any issues with the hydrant, like it leaks or they need to go back and take up the road. They intentionally do this kind of low-tier patching the road job, and then within 90 days, they come back and do actual blacktop and replace the sidewalk. There's some trip hazards there now. I'm going to try to find a cone to put in it so that nobody trips by the fire hydrant. But just wanted to let people know that when this happens on your street, part of the process is they do come back, and there's not really a lot of communication around it. I even asked them, I said, hey, can you let us know when this is happening? And they said, it's not really how it works because it's based on weather and all the balls we're juggling and all that stuff. And so I said, okay, that's fine. If that's how the process works, that's fine. It's just great to know that that's how it works. So wanted to report to the public, not just for my neighbors, but for anyone who has something like that done in front of their house. They do come back within 90 days and do a proper job. And if there's anything that's ever not done proper by a third-party contractor, let us know. Myself, Ori, and David are on the Public Works Committee, and we'd love to know about it so we can move the needle and find out some answers and make things happen for our residents. And that's all I have to share this evening.
Thank you. Leapfrogging back to Mayor Harding, would you like to have a report this evening, sir?
Thank you very much. 2 things. First of all, sorry for my tardiness. I apologize for that.
No worries.
Second of all, just real quick, at this Saturday's Old Fashioned Christmas Parade, we will again be somewhere near the front with shopping carts collecting non-perishable items that we donate to the local veteran community in need. So please come to the parade. Remember to bring something if you'd like, and we'll grab it with a bag as we push the shopping carts. We'll be doing a bunch of social media posts this week to remind everybody. Thank you.
Excellent. Always the best part of the parade. All right, does anyone have any discussion items that were not submitted for the agenda that they'd like to raise this evening? Hopefully not, because we have plenty to discuss. All right, great. Moving on to other business, the first item is Birdtown, Pennsylvania presentation, which will be led by Councilperson Applebaum and members of the EAC who have joined us.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Before I hand it over to Patty Kleiner, we have reinvigorated the Environmental Advisory Commission recently, and I'm quite happy to announce that the people on the committee are extremely dedicated and professional individuals with, skill sets that are related to the fields that we're trying to either protect or, educate people about. And one of the things that came up recently, sometimes I refer to it as low-hanging fruit, but it's just as important as many of the other things that we discuss in the EAC, and that is Birdtown, and becoming a member of the Pennsylvania Birdtown. And I wanted to introduce Patty Kleiner. Then I have an announcement to make after you're done. And I'll read the resolution, excuse me. Oh, Elizabeth, thank you for joining us tonight.
Committee. As David said, said, we are looking at becoming a bird town. We are surrounded by bird towns, Lower Makefield, Newtown, Morrisville, and I was approached by the Lower Makefield person to kind of get it going for Yardley. So I want to tell you about Birdtown. I'll read to you in their own words what they are. Birdtown, Pennsylvania is a statewide municipal-level conservation program working directly with municipal leaders to develop bird-friendly communities and raise awareness of the important role people play in supporting bird populations. By encouraging cooperation within and among communities, the program seeks to ensure the long-term well-being of birds by restoring and enhancing their habitats, reducing threats to their survival, and other positive, impactful environmental initiatives. So we're going to get on board with that. And some of this we already do. Part of it is, the Shade Tree Commission. That's something that is helpful for the birds. So there are 4 steps, and I think David's going to address some of this, but you need to pass a municipal resolution, form a 3-person committee, Elizabeth and Noah Kuzma, who's not here, is the 3rd person, paying a one-time application fee. David's going to address that as well, I believe. And that covers the cost of the 2 signs that they give you to put in the town, and then to complete the application to go with the fee. So that's it, and then we will be a bird town.
That's great.
Welcome to that.
Excellent, thank you.
I just want to thank you for your hard work, and you too, Elizabeth. I appreciate what you're doing. Well, you're there for support. And actually, I do want to thank you because you are one of our newer, not official members, but a member to the organization. I appreciate that. So, as you pointed out, there's a couple things that we need to complete, God bless, to make this official. One of them is to pass a resolution to adopt it. And then secondly, we need to see the money. And so I did what I always do, and I reach out to people in the community, and I have secured a $100 donation to cover the cost of the application fee from Spearhead Project Earth. I know them well. And just to speak to that for a second, the EAC's Spearhead Project Earth, and a lot of the initiatives that the EAC and Spearhead Project Earth are very much aligned. And so from the president of Spearhead Project Earth, Robert Catalano, I'd like to say that he is extremely pleased to make that donation to you.
Great.
So, without further ado, may I read the resolution?
Please.
Okay, so this is Resolution 24-12, a resolution of Yardley Borough to adopt initiatives to be recognized as a Pennsylvania Audubon Council Birdtown, Pennsylvania. Whereas Yardley Borough recognizes that birds are indicators of environmental health and pledges to provide resources for them. And whereas the Pennsylvania Audubon Council, owner of the Birdtown and Birdtown, Pennsylvania service and design marks, and offer of the Birdtown, Pennsylvania programs and services, works with municipalities to engage and educate their residents, schools, and businesses about conservation actions that they can take to create a healthier, more sustainable environment for birds, wildlife, and people. And whereas Yardley Borough recognizes that these programs and services could be a powerful tool to increase green living, promote a culture of conservation in our community, and provide positive social, economic, and ecological outcomes. And whereas Yardley Borough recognizes that using native plants and trees and reducing both stormwater runoff and non-renewable energy use can help restore natural systems and ecological integrity. And whereas the elected representatives of Yardley Borough have a significant responsibility to provide leadership which will seek community-based sustainable solutions to strengthen our community, increase property values, and promote our general welfare. Almost done. And therefore, be it resolved that to engage in new efforts to live lighter on the land and provide a healthier environment for the people and birds of our town, Yardley Borough wishes to commit to ecological initiatives, and by doing so will be recognized as a Birdtown, Pennsylvania community. Be it further resolved by the Borough Council of the Borough of Yardley that we do hereby authorize the Yardley Borough Environmental Advisory Council to serve as the agent of Yardley Borough for the Birdtown, Pennsylvania processes. Resolved this third day of December 2024. So I think, do I ask for, were you going to ask for a vote, Caroline?
Sure. Do I hear a motion to accept the resolution 24-12, Birdtown, with just one change? EAC is a
Commission, right?
commission, correct?
Yes, sorry about that.
Can I ask a question?
Once we have the vote, the motion on the table, absolutely. There was, who made the motion? I'm
I
sorry.
made the motion.
Motion made by Councilperson Feiner. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilperson Carlson. Councilperson Scherer.
Sorry. I was just curious. One of the things you said was we would be offering resources for birds. What does that mean? Could you
I'll
explain that?
defer to my colleague.
One of the things, I was just saying, these shade trees that are being planted, are they native plants?
That's probably a little bit over my head, but I want to say yes.
Because that's a resource.
That's a
You know,
resource.
just planting
I can speak to that.
David, do you know?
When I was working with the arborist from the Shade Tree Committee, they were very careful to only suggest native plants and trees down by the river where we were doing our work there, so I can say yes with great confidence.
Michelle, that's
Because, yeah,
Go ahead,
yes,
finish
that. And then another thing that struck me about your planting on your tree is that I notice, I've done a lot of work with trees, and I've noticed a lot of trees are planted with these volcano mulch that goes on,
Oh, yeah.
creating that volcano effect. That's the worst thing you can do to a tree. Well, not the worst, I mean, things are bad, but it's really bad. You're setting it up for failure. The flare needs to be seen, and that's why trees are meant to be, I mean, they just get the we don't get acorns from the oak tree, which, by the way, is the number one tree you want to plant. It supports the most amount of wildlife, and which is, it's pretty much the beeches, the hickories and the oaks, they've taken over from the chestnut. The chestnut that used to be, there were 5 billion trees all down the, well, I don't want to get off, but anyway, it's really important. So that would be things that we would, that Yardley would provide, making sure that the plantings are native plantings. Nothing that is not native, that would be great. That's, sorry.
Well, I can speak to a little bit of that. So, first off, I apologize. I don't know. I grew up in Texas for 20 years, so the entire concept of trees is new to me because there's not trees unless there's lots of new development in Texas and they plant trees. But it's funny, I was just there for a week with my family, and in their new development, every single tree has the massive piles of mulch. This neighborhood is about 8 years old, and they're already cutting down trees that they've planted, and they just leave them because what happens is when you pile that mulch high, you know this, I'm preaching to the choir here, the roots actually start to grow above ground instead of going down into the ground. And I actually witness it happening. I'm seeing the roots, and they're planted on slopes, and the roots are growing out, like, just to create like this, I don't know, it's almost like you could sit on it like a bench, but it's the tree's roots. Those aren't supposed to be above ground. And so one thing I can assure is that the Shade Tree Commission, they mulched properly, and they did plant an oak tree, and I believe the other trees were lindens, some cherries. The variety changes every year, but I'm pretty confident that they're native. I mean, they were talking so much about trees that I just kind of had to smile and nod and go, okay, you are clearly the expert on this, not me. So, yeah.
My understanding, also to add from the other communities that are bird towns like Lower Makefield, is that the interpretation of resources for birds can be taken in different ways to different communities. And I assume if that interpretation takes shape that you need money from us or resources from us, you will come back to us and ask for them. So we will be invited back into the conversation. But this committee of 3 is going to decide what resources for birds means for Yardley Borough, beyond trees. Right? Okay, cool. Anything else?
Yeah, well, just I want to thank David for just interjecting new life into the EAC and then coming to us with a good idea. And often, as you do, the good idea is funded. And I want to thank the EAC for taking this on. It's not just for the birds, it's for all of our well-being. That's the amazing thing about it. And one thing that I hope the group does is just create more guidelines for residents and how to do this. For example, around me occasionally there's some neighbors that have done pollinator gardens, which is amazing because without even having that, I can see more bees. Like there used to be more bees, then they kind of disappeared for a while, and now I see more bees again, and I see more different birds just from nearby. And if more people do that in aggregate, even a small area, I mean, you don't have to mow it, that's kind of nice, and it's beautiful, and mostly takes care of itself, some work. But people need guidance in how to do that. So if that is an outcome of this, like just one idea, but that would be so useful for so many people. Thank you.
Well, I think we.
Yeah,
vote.
if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, I have a sneaky suspicion that most of you are here for the short-term rental ordinance discussion, so I'm going to bump that up and talk about that next. Mr. Carlson, please.
Okay. All right, what I'd like to do, can you put that on full screen, please? What I want to do is first update everybody, for people who are watching or here tonight, on what's been going on with the short-term lodging issue in our borough, and a little timeline first of it, and then I want to highlight what's in the proposed new ordinance. Believe it or not, this process started over a year ago, back in September of 2023, when we started to see that there were some short-term rentals coming into our community. So Community and Economic Development, that committee is what's responsible for reviewing ordinances and suggesting changes to ordinances or new ones. At the time, I was chairman of that. I'm still on that and carrying through on this project. Then a couple months later, in November, we presented the current state. What we did is we just looked at what regulations do we have around rentals of short-term, which is defined as under 30 days. What do we have? And then what does a lot of the different townships and boroughs around us do? Many of them have regulations already. So I presented that these are all public meetings, of course, presented that to the council, so they got an understanding of what's going on. And we had an agreement there that the best way to move forward is for us to create an ordinance that will bring us up to the present times to deal with the short-term rentals. So that was the direction from the council back in November of '23. One of the key steps then was to get our planning commission involved. So we shared with the planning commission what the council had learned and what the CED had learned on the topic, and then the planning commission provided inputs back to us in April of this year as to what they thought were the key elements that should be in any ordinance that we create in this arena. So we got those inputs back in April. Then we had another working session, key working session here, and any of these working sessions, or whenever you see a public meeting that was at a council meeting, you can go watch the video and see all the details of it. I'm not going to rehash it, but we worked back and forth on what should be in an ordinance based on what the Planning Commission told us, based on input from other residents that we got, and other people who run Airbnbs. So we got a lot of input on that. So we had that working session to come up with it. And then I created a draft potential ordinance, and then we officially voted in September to have the solicitor's office actually draft an ordinance with the correct terminology and tie it into our zoning, et cetera, to make sure it's all done the right way. So we set that in motion in September, and then tonight we now have a draft ordinance that has been prepared by a solicitor's office, and we're going to talk about that in the next few slides as to what's in that. And then the next steps, just so everybody understands the proposed timeline, this can change. But the next step from here will be, assuming we come away in the next few minutes, in agreement that this draft is close enough to something that we want to get out there to have reviewed more, then we'll pass it on to Yardley Borough and County Planning Commissions, give them another shot at the actual ordinance, not just the concepts, and they will see that it incorporates a lot of what they told us about last year, or earlier this year. And then we will get a proposed final ordinance ready to advertise, and then there's a period of time we have to wait, so it's advertised, and you get lots more public input, and then voting on it. So we probably voted on it. Earliest, I would guess, would probably be the second meeting in February, maybe the first meeting in March. So, it's a long time coming, but I wanted everybody to understand where we are in the process. So we're getting much closer to the finish line. Okay, next slide, please. Rather than pull up an ordinance and read through all the details of it, it's about a 9-page ordinance. I pulled out what are the key things that are in it. So the key thing that is in this is we're calling this short-term lodging. By the way, I got to get out of short-term rentals and call it short-term lodging, STL. There's 3 different kind of accommodations, if you would. The first one in there is defined in there as a specific bedroom accommodation. That means when someone has a home and they want to rent out a room while they are still living in there, that's one kind of short-term rental, where the owner is occupied and owner is there during the stay. The more common are where an entire home would be rented out, and then we divide that into 2 groups: homes rented in commercial or industrial zones, and then entire home rentals in residential zones. The current ordinance has in it a 2-night minimum in the commercial or industrial zone, and a 3-night minimum in the residential zone. It's open to more discussion on exactly how we end up there, but that's how you differentiate through the 3 different kinds of short-term rentals. Next slide, please. Okay, the other key requirements that are in this, we create a whole new chapter. It's chapter 14, so it's a new chapter that goes through all this, so it's all in one place. So if people are contemplating doing short-term lodging, they can see pretty much all the requirements in one place in chapter 14. It's going to require an annual licensing process. So if you want to have short-term lodging, you fill out an application, you go through a licensing process, you pay a fee. In the initial application, in the ordinance, it shows what you need: plot plans, how many rooms, make sure each bedroom's 70 feet, safety things, et cetera. So there's a lot of requirements to lay out what is your property that you want to do this for. A maximum of 2 guests per bedroom plus 4 additional people per property that you can rent out. Liability insurance of $500,000 at least. Proof of payment of the lodging taxes in addition to our sales and use and business privilege tax. And then what we talked about, and this is a result of discussions that we've had amongst the council and planning commission, is we want to start with a maximum of 10 of these licenses being permitted for year 1. And then we're going to have a process where we review afterwards 10 licenses in the residential area. And then we want to have a process where we review after a year and decide if we want more or less. And then to help address the issue of not wanting to end up with a row of a whole bunch of rental units taking over any area of we put things in here to spread them out. So you can't have a license granted to abutting properties or more than 1 property per block. So that kind of spreads it out. And then, as I said before, an annual review of the ordinance to determine locations for the following year. Next slide, please. Additional key requirements. Parking. We went round and round in parking and decided that what's in the ordinance today, this could change, but what's in the ordinance today is say parking will be limited to the available off-street parking on the property, and that will be designated on the license. So when you go in to apply to get a license, You're going to look at your property, you're going to say, here are my parking spaces, here's the ones for my existing tenants, if it's a shared property. And so it will be identified and written in your license how many spaces you have, legitimate parking spaces you have on your property for this. So when I say 3 cars max, 2 cars max, and this is off-street parking. So the ordinance says you can't rely on parking on the street, will not be part of it. If it's within a homeowners or a condo association, of course, they have governing documents that often override the requirements of short-term. In fact, the condo association I live in just outlaws them. You can't do it. So if there are homeowners associations, obviously that trumps it. And so if someone is going to do one of these short-term rentals in an area where there's a condo association, they have to provide the documents that proves that it's allowed in that association. And it's in a related vein, also, if the short-term lodging is located in the floodplain area, there are specific instructions about what the visitors have to do in the flood plain area and what they can and can't do in the floodplain area. And all those have to be in each rental agreement and posted in the unit. A local contact person, which is either the owner of the place or someone who they hire to manage the location, must reside within 20 miles or be within 1 hour of the rental unit and available 24 hours a day in case something goes on. And they have to maintain a ledger detailing the length of stay for all the visitors. And then finally, the last one is just a few words, but it composes, I think, 3.5 pages of the ordinance, and that's a process for suspension, revocation, and non-renewal of a license. What we did is we said we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So there's been several townships and boroughs that have been down this path for multiple years and have beefed up and have significant processes for dealing with violations. So it's basically a warning, and then you get a violation. If you have 3 violations in 5 years, you're suspended. And so that takes away your right to even have them. And then there's a process for appealing and to get back in. So it's a pretty rigorous enforcement thing in case people don't adhere to all the requirements. So that's we said the best way to do that is take it from a place where it's working and copy that into ours. So those are the key elements that are in the draft, the first draft. I guess what I wanted to do is open up for council for comments, and if they are in agreement that this is a direction that we want to go to, and moving on to the next step, to let planning and the county commissioners give us more inputs before we decide things next year. Questions?
What's to keep a person in California or further from buying a house and renting it out and having another person that lives an hour from here managing it? Like someone who doesn't know the area, doesn't really live here, doesn't know anything about anything. There is none, right? I mean,
right.
Prevent that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I see that as a problem, but, okay. And the other thing.
About that? Just one comment about that is that just want to point out, that can be done now. It's just not short term, but somebody can own a house in California and rent it out to somebody here over 30 days, right? So you're only talking about the short term version of that.
Yeah, right. No, I get that. And I don't think I wouldn't think it's as much of a problem for long-term rentals than it would be for short. In those kind of instances. And because I know in the draft, we said that, it will provide important revenue to residents of the borough, but I can see that probably a lot of the people that would buy one and use it as an Airbnb and rent it and make it a business probably wouldn't be living in the borough. So, I don't know. I look at it like we should be helping our neighbors and our people in the town. And
Would you recommend anything, Michelle?
I would recommend just keeping it in the commercial district. I think there's enough people that are not happy with, that unknown of who's my neighbor going to be. Is it going to be somebody different all the time? And really kind of like putting a damper on that close-knit community that we have here. That everybody knows their neighbor, and you can walk out your back door and go, hey, how you doing, I don't know, you lose that when you invite people to just rent. I don't know. That's how
I have some comments. As I've shared with several people on council, I'm undecided on how I'm going to vote on this. I go back and forth, but I did try to consolidate the main complaints that we're getting from residents. And we have been receiving both support, mostly the support on social media, and then complaints via email. So I would like it to be a 7-day minimum. We've discussed with people in the public before that the owner's still welcome to just charge for 3 days if they want, but the key difference there is there's someone there for 3 days and then it's empty 4 days, and you have a maximum of 4 different people there in a month versus you could have, 20 different groups there in a month. So it reduces the amount of turnover. I think 2 bedrooms plus 4 is way too many. I could see 2 bedrooms plus 1 if you have a baby. If that's not enough people for you, then rent a bigger house, I think. 2 per bedroom plus 4 would be 6 people in a 1-bedroom. We discussed this last time. That's crazy to me. There's been a lot of concerns about aggressive pets, dogs, so I think we should consider adding something to the ordinance that addresses if pets will be allowed and how that will be handled, maybe only in properties that have fenced-in yards or something like that. And then I think relying on complaints or somebody from the borough to go out and check noise decibel levels concerns me. And we had kicked around some other ideas. I haven't seen another community that has done that part well, but I would like noise to be addressed in the ordinance in a non-complaint based manner.
Can I ask you a question? Just the 7 days, so you're saying that it can only be rented for 3 days within 7 days, not that they have to rent it for 7 days?
So the requirement would be that the person would have to be blocked in 7-day chunks. So if the owner chose to charge for 7 days, fine, or they could just charge for 3 days, fine, but
You couldn't have more than one party in a 7-day period?
Correct.
And that would be for all of them, commercial or residential?
No, I think commercial could be left as is, right? We're not proposing that commercial changes, right?
Right.
And I think 30 days seemed like a heavy lift, and I think the folks who have properties have made it work begrudgingly, like it's not been ideal, but, so I feel like 7 is somewhere in the middle. But potentially having three different turnovers in 1 week, if you allowed 2-night stays, is not acceptable in our community, in my opinion.
And that could address some of Michelle's concerns, because if it's not attractive to someone from out of the area or a corporation, and less of a commercial initiative, but more of a convenience for people who are family where others are visiting, that might be satisfactory. Or not. I'm just trying to throw that out
I think we're
there.
trying to balance also, there's I don't want this near me, right? But then there's the person near you who, for whatever situation, they have a need to, they're going away for a year, or they're unoccupied for a certain period of time, and they want to retain their house so they can come back to it, or whatever their situation is. So we have to find some balance. That might be a way to say, because it's probably not profitable at that point. If it's only, there's some point where it's not viable to do it as a business from California, but somebody who already owns a house and wants to keep the house, get a manager and keep the house for a period of time and come back to it, not sell it, they're not in the same financial need necessarily to make a profit as somebody who's doing this, Blackstone or some big,
Right, no, I get that.
So maybe there's, maybe that is looking into.
Is there still, we talked about it in September, is there a limit on the total number of nights a property can be rented in a year still? Or did that get,
That's in there.
do you know what those are in residential and commercial?
It's no more than 30 days. There may not be total number of days in the year. There's
Okay.
no more than 30 consecutive days, I think it is.
Because at that point, it's not a short-term.
30 total, no, 30 total. One person can only rent a maximum of 30 days.
Okay.
So that part's in there. But no, we do not have a total number of days in the year in there.
So that would be something that I would want to see in there, because I was under the impression, as I've been speaking about this with folks around town, I was under the impression that in residential it would be in there. In commercial, I don't feel like we need it, because in my mind, and this is how I've communicated it to people as I've talked about this issue, and I've had dozens of discussions, even multiple today, to me, the limit on total number of nights in residential is what makes it not viable as a business and separates to, okay, this is somebody that has a space that they can, or you said it really well, what if there's somebody that wants to go on vacation somewhere that they've dreamed of going, and the way they can do it is if they rent out their property for 2 weeks, and that enables them to pay for their vacation. That's something that didn't exist 10 years ago. That's a really cool opportunity to be able to give residents.
And the input that I hear is not I'm not hearing from people, investors saying, hey, I want to do 10 houses in Yardley, and because obviously they're not
that.
right. That's not what any of us are looking to create.
No.
But the idea of people who have a home and want some flexibility,
Right.
to kind of figure out a way to make that possible without opening the door to this kind of outsider town that nobody wants that.
So I live on a street, let's just pretend I live on a street and not in a condo association. And Caroline lives next door to me and she wants to turn her house into an Airbnb. What is my rights as her neighbor to not have an Airbnb next to me?
You don't get any.
I don't have a say.
That's what everybody's
That's a
saying.
good point.
Okay.
Yeah, that is.
That's
But also, you don't have to say if she rents it out either.
Yeah, but a long-term rental is different than,
A short term.
you know what I mean, like different people all the time, especially if I have small kids or what have you. I'm just asking, like, what is the recourse for other neighbors on the street? There's, when you to have a zoning hearing, right, you have to alert your neighbors.
Yes. Whose rights are we trying to protect and who's inconvenienced? I'm not agreeing or disagreeing, but I think you've made a good point.
There are two, yeah, there are two sides to that one. Like, I was thinking, you and I were talking about the shared driveway, right? And actually, on the parking thing, when it says there's an individual parking space, I think we might want to clarify, if people have a shared driveway, that the parking space is like off of that driveway, not in the driveway, because I could see that.
I don't think there's any way you can enforce the parking.
No.
How are you gonna know what cars go there and what don't?
Well, I think anything here that, with the 10 properties, if any complaints come in,
Again, that's the
well,
onus of the
if there's a problem with a property, the owner is basically going to be in jeopardy of not having a license. So I think that the whole idea behind this is to create strict regulation with a very small number, and make it easy for the license to be lost if the rules aren't followed.
But as Caroline said, it relies on the neighbor to complain, and that's a terrible situation to put somebody in.
Yeah, with parking and with noise, complaints with proof would require taking photographs, taking video.
Things that you really would prefer not to be
Surveillance
doing.
type stuff, so the complaint-based thing is a pickle that I haven't sorted through yet.
And then alternatively, what if Caroline and I live next to each other on the same street and we both want to do Airbnbs? Now, we both want a license, we can only have one on that street, the one on that block, right?
First
Now-
come, first served.
Right.
Yeah, so I was going to
But
say.
what happens
A lot of
if we put
municipalities do that.
applications in the same, but you know what I mean, like how is council gonna decide? Those are like future headaches, just.
And that would be a very rare occurrence, I would think.
But mean, other municipalities do limit by block, so, I guess they probably do some version of first come, first served, or,
To talk about what you were saying about, like, having a neighbor that suddenly decides to, have an Airbnb. I remember when my children were young, and I had neighbors on either side and across the street, I knew who everyone was, and my kids knew who they were. And now if you've got young children outside, and every weekend, there's somebody new next door, that's kind of creepy, I'm sorry. Like, it's just like, to me, that would be a nightmare as a mom, to not know who was going to be next door, that my kids would, because kids don't get that. They just, like, oh, it's they live next door, so they're okay. So I don't know, that's a concern.
So I think two things that I think, and we're going to open it up to the public for a comment as well. If we can give substantive feedback on tenants that we would like to see changed, or if you would like to say tonight that I am not going to support this no matter what, I think that that's important to know, because we don't want to waste any more time or money in sending back and forth with the solicitor or wasting the planning commission's time if 4 people are saying heck no to this. So any specific inputs for Don, or are there people who are saying absolutely not tonight?
Well, before that, I'd like to say that if we don't have an ordinance, then we open ourselves up to a bigger can of worms, because if we don't, have something that regulates it, then anyone can pretty much do anything, I guess, except from what the existing ordinance says. Is that correct?
It's currently not allowed, but it's very hard to read, so people don't know.
And where is, oh, sorry,
But I would argue that in the commercial zone, we need it in the commercial zone. So I think what we should be asking ourselves tonight is, do we want to move further along with the potential of it being in some form in the residential area or not? And if the desire is that no in the residential area, but put these kinds of rules in place in the commercial area, where it's already allowed today. You'd be going backwards if you said that you're going to take it out of the commercial area.
Yeah, it's there.
And my personal opinion is, in the commercial area, when you live in the commercial area, there might be a different pizza shop underneath you or next to you. There's going to be changes in the businesses around you, and that's a choice you made to live there. So this isn't that much different. I mean, obviously, it's changing. There's different people there more often, but I personally think we really need to have something for the commercial area at a minimum. And then, but I also agree that we can go further and put more constraints on it, and have a very limited residential thing where you got to put through a lot more hoops, which I put some of them in here, I thought. Or we just say, take that off the table and just stick to the commercial side, so.
Yeah, I mean, this is all
That would make it
up for
very easy.
discussion right now.
Yeah.
If 10 sounds crazy,
Yeah.
throw out 2, throw out 4. Like, we're in draft right now, so throw them out. No? Okay. Any other comments? I'll open it up to the public if not. Don, do you have any specific questions for council?
Well, my question is, do we want to move forward to have planning commission
Well,
look at the details of it?
How many
Or do you want to amend it
houses are
first?
there in the commercial district, do you know, approximately?
No idea.
Okay.
all of Canal, right?
30, 35.
And there currently, how many Airbnbs there?
Let's see.
we got to be careful with using Airbnb because.
Or,
there are- Yeah.
short-term rentals,
There's 2 on
yes.
Airbnb, but I think there's 1 on Verbo, and then there's 1 on some other.
There's at least 2 that I'm aware of, but they appear and disappear. I mean, I also don't stalk Airbnb looking to see if there's short-term rentals popping up. So, it's more just if I happen to see it or somebody complains, or if I'm just looking. I've looked a couple times for family members, but I think there's at least 2 that I'm confident in saying. And one of them just popped up, and it's like, oh, it's here, and the property owner doesn't live here, and we have no idea who owns the building, but it's in a commercial zone, so nothing we can do, and it's already got bad reviews.
Well, Not staying there.
property owners being not as attentive as they should be. So that's, I agree with Don. I think at the bare minimum, there has to be something for commercial because it's completely unregulated right now. I'm not saying we do something draconian, but it's, right now, there's no, when I was traveling to Austin last week, we actually stayed in an Airbnb for 4 nights. And we stayed in a town that I actually used to live in, so it was, or lived in the next town over, so it was kind of like reliving childhood and whatnot. But they just recently passed a short-term rental ordinance, and it was register it and notify your next-door neighbor. And that's it. And a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that used to cost about $200,000 there is now about $775,000 with ridiculously high property taxes because it's Texas. And this is like a area that used to be kind of borderline inner city, but is now gentrifying. And so, I mean, there's a lot of Airbnbs popping up. So my point in that was, I mean, it was nice that my family had one to stay in and we weren't at the Holiday Inn and we were all able to be together under one roof and experience the town I used to live in. But then on the other hand, I went, oh, this is not good if you don't have any regulation, or if the regulation is just, oh, get a permit. But everybody gets a permit.
Okay.
Well, I don't know, if you have too many people buying the houses to make them an Airbnb, I don't know, you lose your community.
So I think then that what I'm hearing from you is, it sounds like you don't support.
I don't.
In residential, but.
Not in residential.
If you were to even consider it, the 10 is too high. Is that what I'm hearing?
1 is too high.
1 is too high? Okay.
Sorry.
I'm just trying to get specific feedback because just going round and round in
Can we get
circles is really not productive, so.
Can we get some sort of consensus that everybody could live with, at least as a starting point, so that we're not on opposite ends? What about like, and I'm just throwing out ideas here, okay, so is that okay? Discussion purposes. What about if the Airbnb the short-term lodging property owner, if that had to be their primary residence? So basically they were like a snowbird or something like that, or away for a period of time, but they still had that as their.
Would you be able to make that stipulation, only snowbirds are allowed to?
Well, no, you could say that you could say that
Just trying to understand
you could
this.
say that it's their primary residence, because they would have to file their taxes at that address.
But you can,
You have to designate your primary
a primary
residence.
residence, you have to live here X many months.
6 months.
Yeah, 1 day over 6 months.
Oh, 1 day over 6 months. Someone had made a comment on social media that they
83
thought
days.
that 8 months a year is a nice thing. I'm like, oh, that's a nice idea. But honestly, I like them in the commercial zone. I think it's safer. And then, like Don said, I think we need to have better regulations because apparently there's not a lot of regulations for the commercial zones.
Right. Okay. Any other specific comments for Don?
I would like to know more about what the public thinks before we decide either way.
Yeah, and Don, can you, in this, calendar with January, February, March, can you clarify, obviously we'll have, the public will speak tonight, and what other portions? Are we going to have a specific meeting dedicated to public input, or are we just going to use public comment during all the meetings?
Well, I would have it be on the agenda, so it's more than just in the public comment, be on the agenda for, if we got, inputs back from planning commission, or we got changes that we want to make based on things we've heard tonight, we have another draft of it. And then when we think we're at the point where we want to lock down what it's going to encompass, and then, have a vote to advertise.
Is this something we would want to consider having a meeting not on a Tuesday evening? To give people another opportunity to, because I got quite a few people who are like, I just can't come on Tuesday evening.
Okay, yeah, that's fine too, yeah. I have no problem with that.
May I ask Don one quick question? It sounded to me that if we were just considering the commercial district, since it's already a set as a precedent. What could we potentially change? Do you have any thoughts on that? If there was?
We could put all these changes in just the
You could
commercial.
without, yeah?
And then we would encourage those property owners that already are in the commercial district running it to conform with all of this.
So yeah,
Okay.
existing properties
wanna make
can't
sure.
require, but any new ones.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank
You
you.
would hope that they would. You know, you have a licensing process. You would think they would want to. It's not so cumbersome, in my opinion, that they would say, no, I don't even want to do it.
No.
You would hopefully.
wouldn't
would
be
want to.
able
They
to.
could, but they could because they're grandfathered. They could technically.
But
but
we
there's only a
can't
couple.
limit the number, can we, in the commercial district?
Sure you could.
Oh, sure, we could. I think so.
Oh, I thought that was, okay,
Well, we, can I ask
No,
you, Andrew, about
maybe-
that? Because there's some sort
Maybe
of
not. I don't know.
limitation of what degree we can limit business. I know from the other.
yeah, that's what I was,
You can still put a limitation on it in the commercial and industrial district, for sure.
And is there any like limit to the limitation, or is it any limitation we want?
So as long as you're allowing it somewhere within the industrial and commercial district, you should be okay to put a limit on it.
I see, thank you.
What about the restriction of properties abutting one another or more than one per block? That wouldn't apply to commercial, right? Or it couldn't apply to commercial?
It's currently not written into the ordinance for,
Okay.
well, I guess it is as an overall, yeah, as a part of the 10 licenses, it is written that they couldn't abut each other or next to each other.
Which is that legal to impose in the commercial district?
It should be, yes, because again, under typical zoning law, as long as you're allowing it somewhere and you do have a way to have that use, you can't put limitations on the use.
I think that would be one suggested change I would make is in commercial. Maybe we keep in the abutting, but one per block. I mean, there's really only 2 commercial streets where they're on. If it's one per block, that means all of Canal Street. I mean, I'm not saying I want all of Canal Street to become Airbnbs, but I think that's overly restricted. So South Canal Street behind Wawa is zoned commercial. There's currently 1 Airbnb there. So that means there's no more on that whole street. And that's a commercial zone, even though every house there is a residence. And I think that's a little over the top restrictive if it's if it's zoned commercial. To say just 1 per block is the over the top restricted, and I think the abutting, we can make that rule.
Yes, Mayor Harding?
So, not taking a position on this in what I'm about to say, but maybe there's a third option, and Andrew told me maybe it's not legal, but I think you guys could figure it out. It seems like you're all kind of going the same direction in commercial. In residential, is there a third option to discuss that? We know currently how many short-term lodgings we have in the residential, correct?
There's none.
No, we have people doing it, or want to do it, right?
No legal ones.
No legal, but
No
we
legal
have people we have
Who want to do it?
who want
We
to
have
do it.
signed.
Want to do
That's
it,
a
yes.
difference.
Is there the possibility to take some of these changes that you're proposing for commercial, apply it to the people who currently want to do it in residential, and then say, as they sell their home, it goes away? So say we have 8 people right now, in 20 years, you would have 0, essentially. So allow the 8 people that are, financially invested to do it right now with the rules that you're going to put on commercial. And then as they sell, remove that kind of grandfather permission, and then they would ultimately phase out to where you would have nothing in the residential and only in commercial.
It's very creative. As you said, we would have to check if it was legal, though.
Yeah, just a thought.
Okay, let's open it up to the
Well,
public.
one
and
more
let-
thought
okay.
to that one. And
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sorry.
We could also do a time limit in residential, a maximum for that property within a given. So like, just throwing out like 2 years maximum, either while that person owns it or within a 10-year period or something. So this way, it would answer the need of people who need to do that with their property for whatever financial reason that they have, yet not create a long-term rotating situation for the neighbors.
So is that like if this home is rented out 200 nights, it will self-destruct in 6 seconds?
Well, the license is
The license expires.
a limited license, and you can't get it again for that property.
I see. Well, so I will say, I want to touch on something totally different that you brought up, joking aside. I think you brought up a very good point. There are a few people that have wanted to do this in residential zones because of legitimate financial situations. And I think that's something that should also be stated, that the idea of, oh, there could be someone coming from California, to my knowledge, that's currently not happening. So I'm always hesitant to make legislation based on things that aren't happening. I'm just more of the overall mindset of let's address things as they happen and not get into the what ifs or maybe I don't like this or whatever. That's just my personal perception. But something we do have happening is people with financial situations, that they see this as an opportunity to not be in the financial situation. And I think that's something that we should also think about as well, because that is something that we actually do know about.
Yeah, I mean, yes, managing short-term lodging is a job that
Right.
many people either choose or need to have. Yes, agreed. Okay, yes, I saw this gentleman first, and then you can make a line if you'd like. You're welcome to. Welcome, sir.
Hello. My name is Brad Levine. I live at 202 Yardley Commons. I will start off by saying I think this is a phenomenally bad idea, especially in residential areas. You don't think it's going to attract California investors? It is. I can guarantee it's going to happen. I'm from Princeton originally, Princeton, New Jersey, and that kind of thing does draw investors. It's just, I don't want to see something like this destroy our community. I had a couple points, and I kind of forgot them along the way. Not the best public speaker, but I think, I know you're worried about some people's income. People who can afford to rent their houses in Snowbird, they're not hurting. So there's that factor there too. And as commercial, as far as commercial factors are located in commercial areas, I still think it's sort of a dicey proposition having short-term rentals. I mean, I know how I was when I was in my 20s. I know how a lot of my friends were. You don't want to be renting to random people, and that kind of draws up another issue is why aren't background checks for both owners and potential tenants a part of this? There's many companies that do that. Absolutely, they should be background checked. Any sensible landlord background checks their tenants with companies like National Tenant Network or something like that. But that absolutely should be a part of this. That's really all I have to say at the moment.
Appreciate your
Thank you.
Ms. Rock.
Okay, I had a lot of points and
State your name.
oh, sorry, Kim Rock, I own 10 North Edgewater. I scribbled on a little Post-it note here, but I think the overwhelming thing that everyone can agree on is we don't want Yardley Borough to be overrun with, 100 people, like you said, from California buying up all of Canal Street or that type of thing. And I don't think that's what anyone wants to do, which is why these are such good points, managing the amount of permits given. And to your point, it sounds like a lot of people's concern is, I don't want to live next door to it. So there's a lot of communities in the Poconos and in the Finger Lakes, for instance, that in order to get the license that we're all talking about, they send a notice to the immediate neighbors, and then the immediate neighbor has a chance to reject. So I feel like that alone can solve a lot of the problems. I personally, as you guys know, own what was a short-term rental that is now a long-term rental that I would like to go back to the short-term rental. And before I even bought that house and thought about doing short-term rentals, I asked the immediate neighbors, because I don't want to own a house next to a neighbor that I'm going to be fighting with. And if the neighbor's not, on board with what I'm doing, I don't want to even own that house. I want to be respectful of the neighbors. I only have one immediate neighbor. There's no one behind me, no one to the left of me, and no one in front of me. And that immediate neighbor is completely on board with what we're doing. And he actually has told me stories of he enjoys, interacting with the guests. So I think just sending a notice to any immediately attached, behind and front, to the left and right, who are most impacted by it, that alone could probably solve. Yeah.
I can research this, and I will, but what does there have to be a grounds for the rejection, like a grievance or a hardship, or it can just be
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I know at one point, we personally had looked into buying a vacation home in the Finger Lakes, and we had looked into that, and I was told that you go to like a zoning board hearing, and your immediate neighbors have a chance to reject your permit. So maybe it's a conversation at the hearing. I don't know, how they rule that, or if it's just the neighbor says, no, I don't want it next to me, and you don't get the license. But, something like that could be a simple thing to, eliminate it from a place where neighbors are not okay with it. But again, the amount of permits I think is super important. Even if you start with 5, like there were only, I believe, 4 short-term rentals in existence in the past 2 years in the borough, So if you just said to, the mayor's point, okay, you 4 that have already started this process and maybe had to put a halt on it, we're gonna grandfather you guys in and you'll be our first 4 permits, and let's, see how it goes with those that were already in existence. And then.
Sorry, can I just ask you one, before you go to your next point? So as an Airbnb, as a short-term lodging owner, if you had to get permission and approval, let's just say the process was simple, they could say yes or no from your adjoining neighbors. What I hear you saying is that you got that anyway because you didn't want to be operating that with them being upset, which makes sense, but you'd be okay with that. That would.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's just interesting because of what was come here. I don't want that next door to me. If you could say no, would that resolve the issue? Question. Thank you.
And from the perspective, so I'm a real estate agent, and from the perspective of the person buying the house with that intent, they could make their sale contingent upon zoning approval. Just like if you buy a commercial property and you want to change the zoning or you want to put a certain type of business in it, you might make your sale your offer contingent upon, I want to know that I can get approval to do this, and go to the, hearing and make sure the neighbors are on board before you even close on the house.
I just have a question. So if you, as a real estate agent, if you're showing a prospective buyer a house on a block, is there a way for that buyer to be aware that there's an Airbnb on that block? Would you
Just searching Airbnb, probably, yeah.
Buyers?
I think that would be part of your due diligence. If
Yeah,
you're
that's
buying the house looking for
just,
that.
like,
That's on you as the buyer
Yeah.
to reach out to the borough and inquire.
Yeah, the same way you would go on Megan's Law and check if there were any, sex offenders on the street, yeah. It's kind of on the buyer to investigate where they're buying.
Is that up to the real estate agent to let the people know or not?
I mean, I feel like a good agent might bring those things up, but I don't think that's a
Don't have to.
requirement of them, yeah. So, I mean, the one thing I think that's kind of being overlooked is the positives that it can bring when done properly. There was a really good discussion on the Yardley Borough Facebook group recently that had, close to 100 comments, and most were positive. And some of the things that people said, actually screenshotted a few. Some of the things were, Karen Klein Schaefer said she looks for Airbnbs specifically when she travels, and it brings people to the area. It's not a bad thing if the owners abide by local laws and ordinances. Tony Shimp said he would take it as a compliment to our town that people are traveling to come here and spend money and stay in the town. If done properly, it's a beautiful area. It's bringing commerce. I know I've kind of given you guys a list before of the people that we've had stay, and it's like my 2-bedroom house in the canal is not conducive to parties and mayhem. It's families, it's business professionals. I've had 4 people that contacted me to rent recently that I had to obviously turn down because I have a long-term tenant in there now. But just to show you who these people were that I had to say no to, and then they had to go elsewhere, was a neighbor of mine wanted her parents to come for Christmas so that they could be close to the grandkids. Another local friend, a Quarry Hill parent, had their sister and brother-in-law wanting to come for Thanksgiving. I I had a local, this one broke my heart. I had a local woman who's going through chemo, and she's recently divorced, and her family wanted to stay nearby but not intrude on her house while she was going through treatments. They ended up in a hotel in Langhorne. There was a local family who was going to be redoing their floors throughout their house, and they needed to move out of their house for 2 weeks. They wanted to stay nearby so the kids could, keep in the same school and not have to drive far. But for those types of people, there are no accommodations in Yardley Borough, So those are the type of people that we get in our house. And then I did want to say I agree on the maximum occupants being less. Most of these things I impose on myself because I want to keep to these types of groups. We have a 2-bedroom house. We don't allow more than 5 people. I don't think there's a need for 10 people in a 2-bedroom house. So I agree with you, 2 per bedroom and maybe like 1 extra that's like a child in a crib or, a teenager sleeping on a couch. And I also wanted to say that you actually run more risk of like the long-term, BlackRock's institutional kind of rental companies buying up a bunch of them, and they don't Airbnb them, they put long-term tenants in them, but then they don't maintain the properties. So I think we're also forgetting that, people on Airbnb rely on good reviews, so they actually spend more money, time, and effort maintaining their properties so that they can keep those positive reviews, as opposed to, I've dealt with a lot of long-term California out-of-state landlords that put a long-term tenant in, and they're relying on that tenant to mow the lawn and do the gardening, and those tenants don't, and those houses get way more run down than the short-term rentals do. And regarding like not supporting our community, again, I think we're not looking at the support of the community that comes from the people who are staying locally and, contributing to the businesses and eating in the restaurants and those things. I think that's all I've got. Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Ms. Mark, appreciate it. Any other public comment this evening? You can ask me a question. We can't have conversations on the floor, unfortunately.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. I was just wondering, like, listening to what she was saying, that I've never had an Airbnb, but I'm assuming that you can choose, like, when people say, I want to come stay at your Airbnb, that you can say, oh, well, that looks like, that's going to be 4 teenagers, so that's a no.
Correct, yeah. I use it.
You have some input, right?
Yeah, the standard Airbnb form includes a field where you have to say why you're coming to town, and you have to list every guest and their age that's going to be staying.
Yeah. Right, so then the person who owns the Airbnb can choose based on that.
Yes, they can reject any listing.
Yeah, so it's not just anyone who says, I want your house and you have to have them.
Correct, yes. Mr. Celentano, I saw your hand next.
Sure, thank you. John Celentano, 136 North Main. No, I'm not going to make my house an Airbnb. I don't like doing that much laundry, but I do have some comments and some questions. A block in Yardley is sort of a strange measurement. So I don't know how you deal with that. I think it's a great idea, but I'm not sure that calling something a block is going to work because the density of blocks or the length of blocks varies. It's not a grid. It's not New York City, where everything's laid out well. Not telling you anything you don't already know. So I think this comes down to a decision. Do you want to have in the residential districts a business, right? Because if an Airbnb is restricted to the number of nights they can rent, it's no longer a business. And if you don't want businesses and you want to restrict the number of nights, that's fine. The question is, do you want to have neighbors able to occasionally rent their properties, right? So I've done Airbnb style rentals all over the world. And it's a beautiful way to travel because you go to a neighborhood and you see what life is really like instead of a Hilton somewhere. And often we've gone to places where it's somebody's primary residence and they go for a 4-week vacation and they rent their property, 4 times for, 1 week for 4 different groups and they're done. That's it. So if you don't want to have a business in the residential, then you should just decide that and get it done and not waste any more time. But, But if you restrict both the number of nights and the number of licenses per night, nights per license, I should, you restrict the number of licenses and the number of nights per license, then you're not providing a service to your residents who might want to rent their house for 2 weeks a year, or 4 weeks a year, whatever. So I think we got to go back to say, why are you trying to do this? If we're trying to do this to make sure everything's kept just in the industrial areas, that's fine, right? I'd be more liberal than what you're putting forward, but I understand it. If you don't want any businesses, that's fine. But to restrict the number of licenses and the number of days, you may as well just say no. Because, you know, if only 10 people, including the business district, are allowed to have a license, the people who might want to rent their place for 2 weeks or 4 weeks a year, you're going to have them go through the full-blown license thing and compete for the last 3 licenses. It's not worth it. It's not worth the energy of the borough doing that. So I'd recommend council think about, are we trying to keep people from being investors in houses? Then that's fine. Then you say then no investment properties for short-term lodging in the residential area. However, people who own the properties, who want to occasionally take somebody in a 3rd bedroom or something, or want to rent the entire property for a week or 2 a year, well, the licensing would still be there, and there'd be a fee for that, but you would allow a lot more than 10, I would think. So those are let me just see. And I guess the idea of a bed and breakfast is an interesting question. In a bed and breakfast, normally I think that's a question for the police.
We have an ordinance for bed and breakfast,
Yeah.
a guest house ordinance that actually I was part of creating like 10 years ago.
And are they allowed in the residential area or only in the industrial areas?
I have to go back and look and see.
It was changed to where it was allowed because there was quite an uproar about it at the time because it was permitted in residential, and we haven't had one happen as of yet.
Okay, because I think that's an entirely different thing.
Streets. It was
Yeah.
Oh, was it
basically
defined
4
as
streets in
streets?
town, yes.
Okay.
It was
And that's-
Afton,
Thank you for that.
It was basically so
Maine.
restrictive that it never made
maybe
sense.
college, it was like 4
Okay.
streets, that's it.
That's helpful to know.
And that's a really different business because you usually have, or always have, somebody in the house, et cetera.
Yes, right.
Anyway, I think you've created a great discussion, and it's an important discussion. But I think there's an important decision before you call a vote on whether or not you want to further discuss it. What do you want to further discuss? Restricting businesses? If you want to restrict businesses, just do that. If you want to restrict homeowners from covering a month or 2 to help them pay for their vacation elsewhere, well, then you have to have more than 10 licenses.
So are you suggesting, just so I understand, the idea that if you're a homeowner and for a short period, 2 months or something, or I don't know, a month, you want to rent out part of your home, or you want to be there and you want to rent out like the guest house or the garage or has an
Whatever,
apartment or
yeah.
something.
I know I have a
That
garage
there's
with a little
some-
room above it. I don't want to do that.
Right. But that there's some thresholds under which you would do that without a license, just within those parameters.
No,
You
I would
get a
say you
license
still have to
do
have a
that.
license. You still want to regulate it, right? The problem is if you let people stay 3 months, or I don't even know what the date, I'm sure the police know, there's a certain number of days where people have squatters' rights. So you want to try to avoid that. It's not very long. If you've ever tried to evict somebody, which I have, I've owned some properties, it's impossible. So you want to make your short-term rental to be shorter than the number of days that gives them rights. But at any rate, I've taken enough of your time. Thank you for bringing the thing forward.
I saw purple jacket next. I'm sorry, I forgot your name, ma'am. It's okay. It's all right. Heather Brinkworth. Welcome back.
Thank you. Heather Brinkworth, 146 South Main Street. This gentleman, what's your name? John. John, he said just about everything I've been thinking about. Airbnb or VRBO, short-term rentals, it didn't start out as people having businesses. It started out as people saying, hey, I want to go on vacation, but I don't get paid from my employer vacation time. So if I rent it out, I can, go on vacation and afford it. It started out as something so much simpler than what it's become. So we have an opportunity, and it's not just, hey, here's a bedroom. It's people have to. It's not just given a bedroom. It's a job. It's hard work. So somebody, let's say Anne is 71 years old. One weekend will pay for her medications that her 2 jobs making $14 an hour won't pay. So to go through all the licensing processes and the fees, that's going to be a lot for Anne just so she can get her prescription filled for the month. I think, I just lost my train of thought. Please bear with me. I think that's a lot of red tape to cut through just so somebody, like John said, could just rent out for 1 week a year, 2 weeks a year, or even one weekend a month. Oh, that's what I was going to say. And I don't know when the complaints started coming in, but back in 2020 when I moved in, my neighbor and I were Airbnb-ing, and there were no complaints, nothing. Also about people coming from California, I don't know if you've seen the price of houses anymore, but you can't turn a profit on short-term rentals with the price of houses and the interest rates. So, I mean, hopefully there will be correction, but if there's not, the price of houses is astronomical. You cannot turn a profit on short-term rentals with the price of houses. The stimulus checks are gone. 2020-21 is over. So that's a thought to think about. Like, it's not 2021 anymore. It's 2024. Things are changing. And yeah, I know last time I was here, the fees were pretty high. That might be high for somebody that was just renting out for sporadically. But yeah, we couldn't have businesses. We couldn't have a business if it was limited time or to 3 days a week. We couldn't run a business. And I think I have renters, and it's awful to live next to. I would much rather live next to short term because they're in and out. You're not stuck with the same jerk 24 days, hours a day, 365 days a year. They're in and out. And then, not to mention, this is Yardley. I think I did give you guys some statistics. I did an average that my Airbnb would bring in $48,000 a year in restaurant sales. But this is Yardley. We didn't, just like Kim said, I got people coming to visit family. I had people coming, families visiting their family, people with plumbing out in Newtown. They wanted to stay close. Oh, you allow dogs? Great. A lot of that, it was really beneficial for the community as a whole. We're not Philadelphia. We're Yardley. I mean, we got Princeton residents here, Newtown people. We're attracting families, et cetera. So that's just something to remember. Oh, and one more question. This is it. Thank you for your time. One more thing. With the voting for having your neighbors vote, I don't like that idea because I would probably be sticking like a pin in my voodoo doll against my neighbors. Like, I don't think neighbors should have to vote against it. Like, I would really have something up against my neighbors if I found out that they voted against me, because I'm just mean like that. But, okay, then this is my final thing. My street. If my street qualifies for bed and breakfast, does it qualify for commercial Airbnb if you decide against residential?
No, you're not. It's not a commercially zoned property.
But I'm zoned for.
146 South Main.
Yeah, I'm zoned for a bed and breakfast.
But that's a very specific definition and wouldn't fit. If you go look at the ordinance, the whole, yeah. So if you had the bed and breakfast in that location.
Now, can I use Airbnb and VRBO as advertising platforms for a bed and breakfast?
As long as it meets the guidelines of the ordinance, you could advertise it wherever you want it to.
I've specifically seen that, like
Yeah.
true bed and breakfasts, where the owner is cooking you breakfast advertised on websites like Airbnb and VRBO, absolutely.
Okay. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much.
Other comments on this? Yes, ma'am.
Marcia Child again, Lantern Court. I wanted to say that I think it's really important to have regulation to protect our neighborhoods. I agree with many of the things that were said about trying to protect what we have here. It's not like we don't want to have change, but it's very important to protect because once the floodgates open, you cannot go backwards in time. I saw this happen in my mom's neighborhood in Colorado Springs, how it had been just a wonderful neighborhood, and it was a combination of short-term and also in corporate investing in homes and long-term corporate investors and then short-term as well. And I watched that neighborhood decay because it wasn't taken care of and there were a lot of cars coming and going, and it really destroyed that neighborhood, and my mom ended up having to move, and she's now nearer to me. But it does happen, and I think we can't wait and see, wait till a problem arises to think that then we're going to legislate about it. We have to be proactive and try to think very forwardly about what can happen, who can invest in these sorts of things. And I think it's true, like in the early days, the Airbnb, it was so innocent and nice that it's your home, your private permanent residence, and occasionally you have somebody in, or you're away for a week or something. It makes sense in a way, with the proper regulations and the proper rules to control it, and very well controlled from the very beginning. But opening the door to making it an entire business in a residential area, I think it's a very risky thing, and you can't go backwards in time then and undo it. It's too late. Because I've seen it happen, and I just would hate that to happen in Yardley, because I love this town, and I'm so happy I moved here. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
One thing I will say to Ms. Childs is, if you're on Lantern Court, I believe you very well may be in a condo homeowners association.
It's not allowed in
So it's not, okay, I was going to ask you if you knew.
For me, like, I'm
Gotcha.
But I just love that I walk a lot in the town, and I just value every neighborhood here, and
Sure.
I hate to see it.
No, that's helpful. No, I was primarily asking because I've had the thought in my mind, and I don't know anybody who lives there, so I thought I'd ask you since you're here. So it's helpful to know.
Any other comments this evening? Yes, Dr. Perlmutter. Welcome.
I was watching it. I was watching the meeting and ran down here, so I'm out of breath still. I think the one thing you are not taking into consideration is how are you going to enforce this? You have several people doing it illegally now, and you can't even enforce that. In fact, one of them that came up and spoke not only was given a cease and desist, but continued renting for another 6 months. You had to hire attorneys to take her to court. Then she had the nerve to come in here after she was fined to blow smoke up your butts and say that she didn't understand the ordinance. And now the mayor is suggesting that you grandfather her in. You want to reward people who are doing things illegally, were notified of it, and won't stop. So how are you going to enforce this? You can't even enforce it when it's not legal. And from experience, as I said before, I had an illegal Airbnb next to my house for 8 years. How many complaints? I can't even tell you how many times I reported it and nothing was done. Do you want to hear the litany of things that have happened? The bridal parties all night long, the dozens of cars back and forth, you don't know who it is, the person with the dog that got loose and went into my yard and attacked my dog. You have no idea who's going to be next to you. And I think Councilman Scherer has the right idea. Keep it in the commercial zone. When you purchase a property in a commercial zone, you can do things commercially. And the chief doesn't have enough to patrol now. What are we going to add to our police force just because a couple people want to make some extra bucks? It's a commercial zone, and you absolutely should not grandfather anybody in who's been deliberately breaking the law and making a mockery of the entire council in the process. So I think there's a lot of people who are against this who didn't come tonight because they feel like it's not going to be a vote tonight. But why waste your time any further? As I said before, there should have been some kind of polling or something that was done before you waste the time of the Bucks County Planning Commission. I really believe, and I handed out 400 flyers, and people don't just take flyers. They usually just blow you off. They didn't know about it, and I would say 95% of them don't want it. So you have a handful of people who just want to make some extra money at the expense of depreciating our property values, and you never know who you're renting to. You really don't. And I actually like the owners of the property that were next to me. They were a nice couple, but they didn't even want to continue living with it. They moved away and then made both sides of their house Airbnb. It's very disruptive. And if you have small children, you really wouldn't want this next to you, because it's just, people are on vacation. They're having parties. It's not like a regular lifestyle. It's not like having a neighbor, a true neighbor. So the biggest thing is you can't enforce it. You'd have to have 3 West Forkers. And how's he going to do? Go into a bedroom and see how many people are in there? There's no way to enforce this. If there's noise, then you have the police having to have to be called. It just increases the amount it'll cost the borough. And why? There's like really no reason to do it. It's legal in the commercial zone, so you're not prohibiting it. The people that are doing it now that, want to do it, let them sell their property and buy one in the commercial zone, and then they don't have to worry about it. So I really think that your instincts were correct, and that it's just a very dangerous thing. And I don't understand how you can possibly determine how many people are in a bedroom, whose car belongs to whom, and the licensing idea, that creates another problem. Who's going to decide which neighbor gets the license and who doesn't? That's not fair to the people wanting to do it. I mean, who gets to be the lucky person on the block? The one that was doing it illegally and pretending that she didn't get a cease and desist and thinks that she can just make a mockery of the town and come here, and then you're paying the attorneys? How much do you want to go through that? Somebody who does that shouldn't be allowed to have a license at all. They've already demonstrated that they're not going to follow the rules. So I think it's just not practical. It really isn't practical. And I really wish that somehow you could poll the town so that people could let you know that. It's not fair that a handful of people get to make some money at the expense of everybody else and changing the whole town.
Dr. Podelman, I thank you for your comments and your candor. I did want to take the opportunity to say something to you about your advocacy on this issue. I know that you're very passionate about this, and you've had experiences with it on either side of you. And I reject your notion that you've put forth that we've been doing this in secret. I don't think that's true, but I accept your critique that we can do better communicating when we're making big decisions. And I think you did an excellent job in bringing this to people's attention. And we received a lot of emails based on the flyer that you handed out. And I think what people don't know is we love to receive contact from the community. We don't like to sit here with 20 empty chairs talking to ourselves. We like to know what everyone thinks. And the reason that we received those emails was because of you. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. I also think a lot of people are shy or afraid to come in. There's a lot of reasons, but thank you. You're welcome.
Any other public comment this evening? Did you have something you wanted to say? Sorry.
Well, I just wanted, I appreciate you saying that, and I appreciate you getting people aware of what's happening here. Sometimes it's hard to get people's attention. But I also want to point out that, and I think everyone here is here in good faith, and there are multiple perspectives to the issue. And so when you hand out a paper that has kind of information but is sort of like, are you aware this is about to happen? It scares people, right? And so 400, right? But here we don't have, like we have like some with this perspective and some with that perspective. On Facebook, they're more for it. On the emails, they've been more against it. My only point to that is that our job is to find some kind of balance. It's very clear. People don't want transient activity next door. It's also clear people, at least some people, don't want the limitations on what they can do with their property to impose on their plans. So our job is to find some kind of balance that works in a intelligent way that everyone, maybe not everyone's going to be thrilled, but at least they can live with it. And that's what we're trying to get to.
Well, when it's next to you, tell me how you feel about it.
Yes, I see one more hand in the back.
Good evening, Council. I'm Martha Hallett. I live at 24 Penn Valley Drive. I don't own a property that would be used for a short-term rental, but I could be living next to one. Just want to speak with that perspective. I am fine with the idea. I have rented short-term rentals in other areas before, and you are given a thick binder full of rules that prohibit parties or putting your trash can in the wrong place. All these things, you get fined extra money if you mess it up. That being said as well, it is more expensive to stay in one of these short-term rentals than a hotel in the area. So you're already winnowing down the population who wants to stay to people who have a sentimental attachment to the area, mostly people who have families in the area or here for a wedding, something like that. They're not interested in disrupting the town. I already can't pick my neighbors. Some of them are lovely, some of them not so lovely. I'm fine living next to a recurring, in and out group of people. People are generally friendly. I don't think we need to just demonize people because we don't know them here. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments this evening? All right, so I think it would be nice if we could kind of calendar out our next step on this. So we're not taking any formal action this evening. You received a lot of inputs. I think it would make sense to apply, I don't know, what we want to do with those. Take it back to committee maybe. But I'm thinking January, right?
Yes.
To revisit.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you need this evening?
No, I guess, there's some things that are very clear that we should include in it, not go into the 2 per bedroom plus the 4 extras and things like that, some of those changes.
Well, I think.
But I still think that there's the fundamental commercial versus residential, and it impacts what kind of ordinance we're going to come up with if we have residential on the table with it.
So I think we need to look into the feasibility of some of the things that were proposed this evening and which ones could be drafted into something and which ones can't.
Okay.
And then I think we should vote in January, because if it fails, there's no sense in, at least the residential portion, there's no sense in, continuing to waste time on the draft. Does everyone agree?
Don, I'd like to thank you for all the time you put in. I know this is a tremendous amount of work for you.
Thank you.
It's a learning experience. I know more about it than I ever.
He said it was
It is- Yes, it's fun. I've learned more than I ever wanted to.
There's more fun for you. We're very sad up here. This is fun for us. All right. Okay, so we're good? Okay. I'm going to close that out. And we'll move on to our grant prioritization exercise. So I'm going to put Patty and Don on the spot. How much do we have in capital reserves?
Did I bring that with me?
As of today, capital reserves, we have about 224,000.
Okay, so the first question that we need to answer as a council is, from the 2025 budget, this will not impact millage or tax discussions. The proposed budget has a 2 millage increase. We're just talking about earmarking match funds from those capital reserves, and we would like to make that decision when we vote on the budget. So how much of that money do we want to earmark for grants? Because that's going to limit what we're able to apply to from this list.
Well, we've already earmarked in the budget, 22, what was it, 24? 28, right?
For grant applications.
Yeah, 28. So,
Are you asking, do we want to change that? Or-
Right, so the purpose of doing this before the new year, because we could have waited, is we were trying to get an understanding of if we wanted to allocate more of the capital reserves for the match portions of these grants. So the 28 was to apply. And do we want to allocate further from the 200,000 plus to match these grants? And I think we need to decide on that number before we get into the weeds, because it's good, while we still have our feet on the ground, to say, what are we comfortable spending from reserves on grants? And that's only if they were awarded the grants, remember.
well, you're not going to spend much of it in 2025 to begin with. You're going to be lucky to, I see 25 as I see this exercise as lining us up for what are the ones we want to go focus on? And are there ones with match that even though there's match on them, we still want to go forward because we think, the net benefit is good, it's strong. But having them also pay that match and do that work and do that project in calendar year 2025, I think is unrealistic.
Okay, but so I'll phrase it a different way. If we decide we want to go, some of these are $500,000 with a match of 50%. We would need to plan to replenish next year. Right. So I think we have to have some sort of understanding of what skin do we want to put in the game from our savings accounts. And maybe we don't have an answer to that. If we just want to jump into the exercise, that's fine, but I do think we need to, because we've had lengthy discussions on this council when we want to apply for a grant about no, we don't want to touch that because it wasn't planned.
Yeah. So we have the application amount, the cost to apply as a line item in the budget.
Got that.
The reason that and we all had discussions about this, right? The idea is that the reserve fund is, and I actually wanted to change the name of it or to create a different fund, but it's okay as long as we agree. The reserve fund is what allows us to win a grant and then, we didn't spend any money for 2 years on matching. Now we can spend money. We have X amount in the reserve fund. We don't have to do this year-to-year thing because it's very difficult. If you look at the cost of what we do, and even a 20% match, a lot of these are 50% match, it basically eliminates over 90% of the possible grants if we can't meet the match. So the idea that I think if we just, and I understand you want to get to an actual number, but just so we understand conceptually, reserve is so that we can, one of the primary functions of it is replenish it annually, but use potentially more than that replenishment when the right grant comes along that we voted on, that we wanted to pursue, and is a significant amount of the reserve.
So is everyone kind of aligned with that? I think that makes sense to me, but if we were awarded a grant for a project that we all decide is a top priority and it requires us to spend the full amount of our reserves, are we comfortable with that?
No, I don't think you should ever spend all of your reserves.
Well, it's not our only reserves. We have an emergency fund. It's our capital reserve.
It also should be important to note this capital reserves fund did not exist 5 years ago. Is that accurate, Don?
I'm not sure that's accurate, but it's close. Close.
A number of years ago, this fund did not exist.
Right.
So it's not that this is a 30-year-old fund that's never been touched that we're tapping into.
No, but it was a step function increase in taxes that we took.
Gotcha.
17% increase, as I recall, back then, to initially get these funds going. Okay, and so that was the idea there. So I'm not in favor of going for a big project that wipes the whole thing out in 1 year, because you can't replenish it in 1 year, or unless you're saying you're going to go out to everybody and say, by the way, we'll go right up to our maximum mill rate in a heartbeat. So.
So before you apply, you should look at, well, what would the match look like?
Yes.
And then you can decide not to apply if it doesn't make sense in
You
that
need to always
round.
have extra, because a bigger grant might come along, like some kind of bigger emergency could come up that you need that money for a match.
Well, it's not the emergency fund, though. It's different than the emergency fund.
Ori?
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question regarding, which I thought was a concern we had in Public Works, and that is, and you sort of alluded to it, that we were discussing, we have capital needs for Public Works. We're not considering that to separate?
That was something that I had spoken to with Caroline and with Don, and what we came up with was that is the capital reserve fund. And we need to be aligned. That's why the question is, I want people to be aligned, because like when Michelle says, what if you have an emergency? Like, no, that's not what capital reserves is for. That's what the emergency fund is for. So we need to be aligned. Otherwise, then yes, I would want to have that elsewhere.
The capital fund
that's
isn't
clear.
just for matching
Capital
grants.
projects.
Capital
Right,
reserve is
for projects.
projects, are they?
Like if you want to do the roof and we get 50% of it and it's $200,000 and we agree, we want to spend the match $100,000 to get the roof done, are you going to say, no, that's for an emergency? That is what that's for, is what I'm saying. So I want to make sure we're all aligned that that's what it's for. Otherwise, I'm not sure what it's for.
Well,
I would love for us to create a definition of what this fund is for, especially since we have this in addition to an emergency fund. I think we ran into this in June, that we, yeah.
We're not doing that tonight, though.
Okay.
not clear.
Can we add it to the agenda?
Sure. We can
Do it in
that
January.
New Year. Let's kick everything to the new year. Okay. Okay, so what I'm hearing is we have the 28,000 for applications. We're not super concerned with the match yet, because if, most of these are due in April or November, and they, wouldn't be awarded until sometime late year, early 26. But generally speaking, this council's theology is we would not completely drain the comp reserve on a match. Is that accurate? And I think the only project that would probably hold us back on would be substantial renovations to Borough Hall.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so everybody received, and this is kind of a working session, so I don't know, Mr. Foley, if you want to stay, Mr. Griffin, if you want to stay, you're welcome to, but you don't need to, because this is sort of like a...
It's up to you. If you think you might need me or you want me to stay, I'll stay. If you're excusing
You're already packing up your papers.
He's packing up as he's saying this.
You can go onto YouTube and stream it on your way home.
It's completely up to you whether you'd want me to stay or not.
You're welcome to go, and same thing, Mr. Foley, but you're welcome to stay as well. And Chief, you're welcome to go, because I think it's going to be a late night.
Vote for me.
But everybody
Looks
else
like
can
the
stay,
audience
like,
is
we're gonna keep
leaving,
talking.
too.
All right, so you have a link in your email that should have delivered at 7:30, and so we're going to do
Is that okay if I text you?
a pre-survey. It's the first one that says round one. So it has the, what? No. No. Have a good night. So if you could click into that.
I'm on.
And then it just has every project. There's a scroll bar at the bottom. Should be. It's not. Okay. Oh, it's giving me the, so is it showing up okay for everybody?
Which email?
Your borough email should be
Yeah, but when did you send it?
7:30 tonight.
Okay. All right. Oh, there it is. Sorry. Yeah. That's why I didn't get it yet. Okay.
So you're just ranking.
Oh.
We're doing this now.
What are we doing?
You're ranking,
Oh, nice. Okay.
it has a scroll bar on the bottom. So from 1 to 19, or 1 to 20, you're ranking, 1 would be most prioritized, 20 would be least prioritized on the projects that you'd like to, next year, apply for a grant for.
And what's the criteria for that decision? I thought that's what we were doing. We were looking at all this and saying, what are the ones that match so that we would prioritize?
So we're doing, this is kind of like a scientific process. So we, based on what we've brought to the table this evening and our experiences on council and what our committee work does, what you feel like are the top priorities you're going to mark, and then we're going to have a discussion and hopefully align together on the same
Regardless of
thing.
whether or not they're.
Can I ask you one question
There are
about this
matches.
document?
Yes.
So it's not a ranking document where you rank, you move them up and down. It's just numbers. So are you expecting us to kind of distribute?
It will,
Because you might get like 5 ones
it
and
will,
5 nines.
it's locked, so you can only give one.
Oh, so only 9 items? It looks like there's more than 9.
There should be a scroll bar at the bottom. Is it not working?
Yeah, there's,
Oh, that's what. Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
I got it now. 19. Okay.
Oh, I see.
It's just for council to do, or? am I-
You can do it. And Mr. Fuller, you can do it too if you'd like. Did you receive it? I will say that if something did not receive a match on the spreadsheet, like we couldn't find a grant from the ones we looked at, and it's still a priority for you, you're welcome to still mark that as in your top 5. We would just double down and going out and looking for a grant for that.
So we don't necessarily have to compare that side by side?
Yeah, that's
or-
Correct.
Okay. And are we ranking like there's only one number 1, there's only one number 19?
Correct. It's locked. It won't let you pick multiple.
Oh, it let me pick 8 on all of them all the way down.
Really?
Yeah.
Something's not working.
They asked what's wrong with
Well, when I did one, it said this question requires 1 response per row. So that looks correct. That's right. If I did a second one, yeah, it moves it. Oh, I see what it is. It lets you do more than one, yeah.
I just was trying to remember.
One can be one for more than one row. So it's restricting
It's only restricting the
the
row, not
the column, but not the rows, right? Yeah.
All
Just
right.
don't do more than one
Do your
number per.
best. Sorry.
We
And
we can follow rules.
And just to be clear, 1 is the highest.
Yep.
1 is the highest priority.
Yep.
Got it.
Your highest priority.
Thank you. And you too.
And if you don't want to go all the way to 20, you don't need to. Like, it's most important that we get your top priorities. And it should be phase 3. Sorry, there's typos.
Oh, crap. You can actually move the dot by using the cursor. I just found out.
If anybody has a better way to do this, I'd be.
No, I was just pointing it out, that's all. I love what you did.
I think I just found out you need to go to 20 to submit.
Oh, you do?
'Cause I tried
Really?
to submit at 10.
Oh, okay.
I figured my top 10 was enough. But
No,
That was the trick you in to get started, and now you have to finish.
I can change that setting really easily, so let me just do that. Okay, I turned that off, so it should let you submit it now. This was a lot easier on my giant monitors at home.
Is there any way to make it, like, make it wider?
Like a landscape, I guess, yeah. That would be.
I lost track. I lost track of what number I'm to.
I sank your battleship. Sorry. I'll take that as a compliment.
Something.
See, guys, this is what we needed all along. Just some bubbles to fill in Scantron style.
Ooh, that's a good one. Could I ask for clarification on one of these?
Yep.
Access waterfront, annex / end of street. I know where the annex is, but what is it relating to?
So that would be like passive access to the water, like, putting a canoe in or a bench by the water or non-motorized access.
Okay.
And then the end of streets, we own all of those, so that was just thrown out. And there was, surprisingly, that was like the second most common category for grants available was for that, so.
So like also the property that we redid with the $10,000 grant that we partner with Spearhead on, that could possibly be part of that as well.
Oh, okay.
Did I get them all? Did I let you submit, or did you get them all?
I got them all. Make sure I don't have
Yeah, I'm
two in one column. That's what I'm checking on.
One. Okay, well, they can't be the same number, so.
Doing that column, shoot.
This is way harder than it should.
Then you move it over here, and it's like,
No,
gotta
I'm
move
not,
it again.
I'm not critiquing you. It's like,
All right,
I
so-
should be able to count to 19, but I'm realizing how challenging that is.
Two. Okay, and.
Caroline, I apologize. Are we supposed to be doing round 2 also?
No,
Okay.
not yet.
Okay.
All right.
So when I hit submit, if it gives you this, please don't select more than one response. I've got 2 in a column.
Yeah, that means you missed on.
Shit.
Multiple choice grid, and you limit one choice per row and one choice per column.
I did, but.
Did? Oh, it didn't do the didn't do the row one.
Okay.
Take for some reason.
Yeah, I even watched the YouTube video.
Oh, really?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, still good. It's good, it's a good thing. But it doesn't let you know as you're.
We would all enjoy it more if it wasn't 9:46.
Oh, look at Don, he's got a touch screen. Cheating.
I'm still getting the error message.
Furnishings for new properties? What is that?
Like stuff for the, not parks, because we don't call them parks.
Yardley, Trailhead, and Judy's Garden, like benches and
Right.
bike pumps.
Oh, I rated that lower than not knowing what it was. If I knew what it was, I would have rated it higher. I was thinking a sofa. I would have rated a bench for a park higher, but I was thinking a sofa for the annex, so it got a low rating, sorry.
I think we should do that after we bury the power lines.
The sofa for Judy's garden.
The bench for the garden.
Well, I rated burying the power lines higher than I realistically should have, because that's one of my pet projects.
No, I'm more just I don't mean to minimize that, because I understand that. I'm just like thinking, it's funny, like, yeah, we'll get to the park bench, let's bury the power lines first.
If we can get a grant to bury the power lines and then put a bench underneath them,
Well, then,
and there's no match if you put a bench under when you're done.
because you're not under power lines.
And then we could tie it in with Bird Town. Now the birds have someplace to sit since they used to sit on the power lines.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Now we're getting somewhere. I thought birds weren't real.
All right, if you haven't submitted yet, take 2 more
We are
minutes.
still live, but it feels like everyone's gone home and we're just...
That's a joke, that's for everyone, for the public.
15.
So far, though, Borough Hall and Phase 3 are, Delinquent are clear winners.
16.
Traffic equipment is a close third.
We did round one, can we work on round two, or
one
does
more
it
minute.
need
No,
an
we're supposed to
explanation? Okay.
align,
Okay.
have our alignment conversation. All right,
It would be interesting, and not necessarily representative, but interesting to put something like this out occasionally to the public.
yeah, in a better design survey, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but just to
Yeah.
get input for what's on people's, radar for things that they want.
No.
All right, so we can start talking, but clear preference for Borough Hall as our first priority. Mayor's Clock actually had a good amount of activity, even though we had no grant match for that.
I
But
wonder who voted for
I had
that.
like 15th, so.
North Main Street, Phase 3 would be in second, and then traffic flashers are third. Canal DCNR, which is a sticky one because we don't own it, but
I
we
was
can,
wondering actually what that one really means.
Right.
because
Yeah,
It's
like
DCNR, it's not us.
so what I want to do before we, discuss more the meat of these is just take off ones that we don't want to go forward with next year because that's low hanging fruit right now.
No idea.
So personally, I marked Tannery Lot as a deprioritized for next year, which we haven't had a conversation with the owner. It's just, I don't think we're there yet. I'm happy to make inroads to having that conversation, but I don't think we can, make any plans on that right now. And then similarly, I don't think we really have like a shovel-ready project around Canal DCNR. Like, obviously, there's issues, but again, we haven't approached DCNR.
What is that?
that was what was said, like improvements to, I don't know if we meant, like, I'm inferring maybe like access points, like making them more
I think I brought that one up. I think, yeah, it's access points, you know, like from the train station down or from other places. Lots of people don't even know how to get on it.
No, I want to change my
That might also be one I would have
No,
ranked
because,
higher.
because, only because specifically with that one, there's that property by the train station that there is the owner, there is like the one passed away, the family owns it, they haven't done anything with it. And some of the grants, I did research on, could pay for acquiring that, so it's.
I found several grants that were acquiring property to be used as a
match.
greenway, because it is a green space that is a path, I learned the definition of this, a path from one place to another place.
Right, so they'll pay for the property to acquire in order to put the greenway on it. That's what I
Yeah.
saw there.
And there's a lot of those grants.
Yes, agreed. So, but what we're doing right now is we're saying ones that we don't want to move forward with next year.
So are we eliminating that one? 'Cause-
No.
Okay.
No, I
We
heard.
voted incorrectly.
I voted wrong on that,
That's why we
thinking.
did the first, and then we're doing it again.
I can't even get through the first because I apologize, but, oh, thank you. How do I?
Anything else that we don't feel like we were ready to move forward with next year? And, I mean, is everybody okay taking off barn redo, burying power lines, new street signs? And there was one other that could not find any, Hometown Heroes, there were no grants that matched.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else that we would want to take off? Other ones, Buttonwood Park table games, the only grant was we were a very poor match for. Is everyone okay
I'm
taking
okay with
that off?
taking that off, because I feel like if we wanted to move forward on that, that would be something that would be better to approach Parks and Rec with and see what they think of the idea.
Okay, so I think that narrows us down. Then, let me highlight what we have left. And then, since we have an expert here, Michelle, what are your thoughts on the Lake Afton one? I know it's private property. How would that work?
What do you mean, how would it work?
Like, how do we get a grant for something that we don't own that enriches the private property owners? Is that something we can? No, I'm not against it. I'm not, but
That's
I'm not against it. I'm just saying, how do we do that?
That's a tricky one. I don't know if you can.
Right.
Okay.
So my proposal on those would be, let's set up a meeting with Friends of Lake Afton and also chat with the solicitor, because I agree that when talking with people around town, it's definitely a priority, the health of Lake Afton, but we obviously have to talk with the stakeholders before we.
It is, but sometimes the community has difficulty with who's going to pay because it's private.
Right. And I don't know what we're allowed to play because it's private, because that's been a thing the solicitor.
But it's a nonprofit. It's a 501c3, so it's Friends of Lake Afton takes care of it.
But the nonprofit is.
The nonprofit
care.
is the care, and that's what we need help with, is the
Yeah.
care. You know, we're not, like, money to Friends of Lake Afton just takes care of the lake. All of us are volunteers. No one gets any money. It's on the board.
My question is more though, like, I don't know, because we haven't had conversations with FOLO or around the legality of getting money, being stewards of money to private, even though it's nonprofit. Like, I don't know if we're there yet to apply for those. I'm just trying to.
That's a toughie. We got a grant once from Waste Management.
So my proposal is just, we identified these that are, one is a strong match, have conversations with Friends of Lake Afton and see how they want to partner with us. Does that make sense to everybody for that?
Sure.
And I'm just going to, since we're in a discussion, and it's 9:55 p.m., I'll just throw this seed out there, Michelle, for you and for your fellow property owners. If you ever wanted to consider the idea of taking that property, the lake, and deeding it, kind of like what Tim Rutherford did, and making it
something that's part of the borough, then we could get grants to pay for it. And
Yeah, we talked about leasing it to the borough, like a 99-year lease.
oh, that's interesting.
I wouldn't want to deed it to the borough because the borough has sold properties. So,
Yeah, I
kind
think.
of funny like that.
Yeah, no, but with Judy's Garden, we made it so you can't. It has to stay as it is. So that's how we too bad the solicitor's not here, but I think there are ways to do it. I'm just, anyway.
No,
Just thoughts, because then it would alleviate you
Yeah,
from the
we have-
responsibility.
My husband and I have talked about this back and forth for years, like what
Oh,
could
yeah.
we legally do?
Right.
And then there's, oh gosh, what is that, when the government gets in on it, the federal government, that's called, no, where they kind of take over like a park or something, and.
An easement or something, or?
No, the name isn't coming to me, but there were a lot of regulations and there were a lot of like, you must do this, and this, and it was like, what if one step gets missed one time? You know, and now you're kind of out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know. We talked about like I think with Mike Ruddle, we talked about a 99-year lease. Because that's what they did with Langhorne, the Mayor's Park. That used to belong to the school. And Langhorne Borough wanted to use that as a public park and put, they had children's rides and, not rides, but, equipment in there and stuff like that. So they leased it for 99 years to the borough, which, is something that I don't know if it could be done.
I wonder then if we could, if we had a 99-year lease, that we could use that to obtain grants.
Because that way, if it's a lease, it's still owned by the owners, but it's leased to the borough, and then the borough can take care of it. You almost hate to, I know the church probably would never mind if they gave up the lake, but it is part of the property, and in order to have fairness for, not having people like decide that they want to have a boat ride and come over to my property and just be staring in my windows, like, it's just so, we have some protection as an owner, but I don't, I love Friends of Lake Afton, but we need help.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a lot of ripe conversations there, and we should do that in the new year. But for the purposes of this exercise, the borough is not in a position to apply for these grants for the lake at this point.
Right.
So from the remaining ones we have, I just want to give a little more background on the grant chances of success and how that was derived. So I trained an AI model to compare a description of our project with the description of the grant and all of the past awarded grants that are publicly available. And then I reviewed and adjusted it for some of them where they skewed a little weird just based on like not a lot of public information being available. But I feel pretty good about what's there. But if you're wondering where that came from, that's where it came from. So again, it looks like I just checked again with 6 responses in. Borough Hall is still in the lead, Phase 3 still second. Morgan Ave,
What's second?
Phase 3.
Oh, phase 3.
Sorry, it's loading again.
We're already committed.
Yeah, how is that? That's already.
Meaning the Dolington.
You mean
Dolington.
Oh, Dolington.
Phase 4, I guess?
Yeah, the end of, phase 4, there you go.
It says Phase 2, so everyone's
Phase
confused.
3.5.
Phase 4. And then the canal did well, even though people didn't know what it was. Traffic safety was then 4th.
Fire hydrant adapters, nothing?
No,
Oh, if I
and
knew
you know
that.
why I think that is because it was such a low cost. And we already have a plan to purchase them
Oh, okay.
in waves. That's why I deprioritized that one.
Okay.
Well, we got
think we
one
should
for,
do that
we got
until we
one
bury
for free with the
until
fire
we
hydrant.
Until we bury the wires, we're not getting fire.
That's right.
Oh.
Because then if things burn, maybe the power lines will burn.
Three people ranked Afton Ave very high, and then lots of people ranked it very low, so that's one where we have like a bell curve. So I don't know where we'd like to start, but sounds like we definitely need to apply for more than just the LSA for Borough Hall. Do we want to make it bigger than just the roof? I feel we don't have an accessible building, but I don't know if we want to get into all of that at this time.
I just want to say about the rankings that we should take into consideration not just our rankings, but the comprehensive plan.
Mm-hmm.
Because part of our duty is to deliver on what's in the plan. That's all.
When will that be done, though?
Well, we're under the existing one until the new one is done,
Oh, I see.
you know.
Caroline, I think with
Some of those-
taking on the building in addition to the roof, I think that's extending it too far, because I think you're going to be then looking for a lot more money and a bigger grant. If you put it all under one, that could be a lot longer before we get that roof, and I think the roof is a priority.
There are community, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so my concern with just a roof is I don't think it's a competitive grant. I just don't.
Mhm. There are
It's
community
essentially
grants.
Pay for our roof.
Yeah, like there are grants that like, you want to like renovate the building for the use of the community and add an elevator and make a better community room and make it more of a space. So we sort of like combine some of these things into that, and it creates a second floor. So then we're also doing the roof. So they're sort of like packaging it into that, and I think
What's the likelihood of getting one of those grants?
it depends because
I know Caroline had
definitely-
rated them like high,
yeah.
high, low, medium.
I think there might be a higher likelihood, though, what he's saying is if we package it in with other things, because if it's just hey, we need a new roof, that kind of feels like we're asking for a grant for a maintenance item versus we have this vision to make a space more accessible to the community.
Can you shed some light on this one? 'Cause
We
you
submitted
know-
for a roof.
Right, we
We
submitted.
submitted for the roof.
Right.
But
Yeah.
if we don't get it, I think that's.
Yeah.
You don't get it, yeah, I mean, maybe you go,
So the LGCP, for example, it had 3 categories, and we could hit all of them for the Borough Hall. It was improvements to your police headquarters, improvements to your parks and recreation facilities, which are parks and rec rooms downstairs, and improvements to your community center. So that's kind of what spurred this thought that's really what they're looking for.
And when does that
Rolling.
application go in? It's a rolling? Okay.
That one's only
We could
100,000.
ask for all of those together, and then if we get the grant for the roof, then we just pull that out for the grant? For the other application, or can't you do that?
Yeah, you can
You
withdraw
can
an
just,
application.
or you can draw part of the application, and just say, we don't need this particular.
Yeah, if you don't use all your funds,
Apply to
yeah.
multiple grants for
This is
the
the one.
I'm sure they'd be
this is the
happy
one that I
not
did.
to give you as much money.
This one had something where it was a loan.
yeah, the DCD.
Is that the one we're looking at? Where there was
LSA.
there was one that was a loan.
There was one that was a loan, and that, it was
No,
like.
that's
It was a 15-year low-interest loan.
That's
Up to
the,
30 years.
30 years?
Up to 30, I
That may
think,
be a different one. I think the one I was looking at was up to 15.
I think it was, the one I looked at was,
We were looking at
it
different
was
ones.
at least, I don't know, it was quite a lot of
But
money.
my point only is that we wait to find out. The problem is LSA takes like a year to tell us, right?
Yeah, I mean, majority of those, the grants do take a significant time. I mean, we submitted for DCED MTF grant for Dolington Road. We might hear April, hopefully. That's when we heard about
Right.
phase 3.
And that was submitted way before.
And it's a lot longer after that that you actually get the money, right?
No, well, what they did do was, I think once they announced it, the date on that grant is earlier for phase 3. Let me just see what date that was.
So like what I'm saying for the roof, like I was thinking, oh, we would apply for the roof. If we don't get the roof, we apply for the loan, for example.
Well, I think that we had talked about.
It's a
it before,
year
like, if you don't
until we
get the-
even know if we got it.
Right, but a loan, that would be a lot faster to get a loan, I would think.
I think that this exercise, one of the best things about it was the low interest loans that are on here. So for the roof, it would be the Community Facilities Direct Loan
The,
and Grant.
yeah, I was just looking at, for Phase 3, the DCED MTF did have cost eligible starting on March 24th. So pretty much that's very close to when they did award that grant. But it did take a while for the paperwork to come forward as well.
Oh. Okay. And this was just submitted like last week or so, right? The LSA?
For Phase 3, that was
No, I mean
submitted last year.
for the roof,
Yeah, for the roof,
Yeah, that was
So-
submitted last week.
correct. And then they announced last year's LSAs, the beginning of, I think it was the second week of November, is what they
It's
did.
a whole year.
Yeah, so it took about a whole year.
Okay.
And conceivably, we could apply for the loan concurrently, depending on the cost and complexity of the application, so that at the end, we can decide based on what we won, what we
Right,
do.
yeah.
Maybe we have to do both, I don't know.
I think something too that's important to note is we're not just going to kick the roof out 5 years in hopes that we might get a grant. If we don't get a grant,
We have.
well, we've got to stop doing that. That's the problem.
We can't
More
do that
water coming
anymore.
down now, so.
You can't do that anymore. And when I heard Chief say that this has been 10 years, how I almost fell off my chair.
I mean, my take on it, just to share my personal opinion on the matter, is if we don't get this grant that we might not find out for a year,
And we
is
have
that
to get a
we
loan.
have to figure out a
We
way
have
to
to-
pay
we
for
have
it
to
and get it
find
done.
money, yeah.
That's my take on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're passing over the Borough Hall. Ori and I did talk with Paul about forming like a Borough Hall committee to hyper-focus on what we're doing with this building and being better stewards of it. And so, but sounds like for 2025, we have LSA. If we don't get it in time, we don't hear, we'll try one of these low-interest loans as a tentative plan. So, so then we don't want to make plans to apply for any of these for Borough Hall then.
If they're not incorporating the roof, I think we have to focus on the roof. Primarily, like put our.
I mean, all of them you could, I just don't
could, right.
feel like we're going to get it. I mean, I wouldn't give a grant to a building who didn't maintain the roof and wants us to pay for the roof, but.
Well, we would word it differently in the grant application.
All right, phase 3.5.
For our negligence.
But, I mean, the one thing is with the, if you looked at the submissions for the LSA grants, they also had like this school district grant. And it was just like everybody was getting money to replace their HVAC in their roofs too. So, I mean,
There are a lot of random
Yeah.
high-dollar grants that, as you're looking at the list, you're going, seriously?
But all of those like COVID funds have been depleted. I feel like a
It's
lot of those
LSA. Yeah, those were those, but LSA is very like.
Bless.
If you look at the awards, they're, I mean, they buy equipment, they just buy like all sorts of,
yeah.
But we have already applied though, so
yeah.
I'm trying to get alignment here, so we're not here until midnight.
Yes, that would be
Agreed?
nice.
Okay, so phase 3.5, Dolington.
We'll give you a couple during another hour.
I thought, didn't we just
have
put in a
two grant
grant for,
applications.
a grant application in for that?
Are
there's
are we
nothing to do.
applying for any more? Because we've done that in the past. We've oversaturated on a project because we don't get everyone.
Those are the two non-match ones that we applied for. So anything else, or is there anything else that you see that you think is a good fit? Let me see here.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
GDP.
just the one thing I wanted to point out too on the grant items, what we have, the match was on the PennDOT MTF grants. The LSA grants for the MTFs were zero match. So there's like two MTF grants out there. And we've been passing on the PennDOT because they were 30% match.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Do you know with the GTRP grant, or the MTF, why does it say 30% grant?
Because that's what he just said, that's the PennDOT.
That's the PennDOT MTF.
That's the PennDOT one.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you know what the engineering percentage of those, can those be like design grants? Because I have a feeling.
I'd
we're
have
gonna
to
get-
look.
I have a feeling we're gonna get the MTF grant, just because it's part of the same project, if not one year than the next, because whenever we missed it, we got it the next year. So the area that we're really trying to cover is predicting that shortfall of the engineering cost. And if we got that covered with a match, that's a lot less, because we're talking like, the match might be $20,000 or $30,000 for 100,000,
I have to run to my office and get my computer charger. This meeting has lasted one MacBook charge.
So do you know that offhand, Pat?
Does that work for?
I don't know.
Or do you know it?
Know what?
Like the GTRP grant, can you use that as a design grant, or does that have a 10%?
I'd have to look and
Yeah.
I think it depends on
I was
that.
planning.
Otherwise, we're in the same boat as we are with the MTF
yeah.
grant.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gaining anything because we feel strongly we'll get it. Do you agree? Or I know you don't want to go on the record saying it, but we got phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and now phase 4. Unless something changed, it seems like it would be smart to invest in a project that's been the last step of it.
No, I don't think it can be used for design.
And is it also a 10% limit for engineering?
I
Don't know. You have
I
to
can't
dig
get that
deeper.
easy-
Okay.
Easily. Was anyone the one who researched GDPR? Do you remember? About the engineering match? Cap percentage?
No,
Yeah, anyone?
remember that one?
All right, so sounds like, I'm just trying to move us along here. We're good on phase 3.5 for now. Okay.
Unless GTRP can pay for more than 10% of design, then it becomes something intriguing to us.
So I'll
Or
highlight
10% of engineering, I'm sorry, yeah.
that.
Pat, about what percent of the project is engineering? And do you remember, like, just ballpark?
For phase 3.
For phase
I mean, Dollington?
Dollington, yeah.
For Dollington
Yeah,
sidewalk extension?
right,
I could look it up.
okay. It's like around 1/3 or so.
What was the total number?
1/4, don't remember exactly, it was around 140 maybe?
I have that broken down on a spreadsheet.
If you had it offhand, no.
First thought, it just seemed expensive.
There's a lot of engineering for a small, yeah.
All right,
I have a problem with it. I just don't see the return on the investment. I'd rather spend my somewhere else and let the people walk on the grass. Your cost per foot is ridiculous.
drainage on Morgan is one that we've been neglecting for a long time. I think that at the very least, we should start working on drafting something.
Sorry, which one were you talking about?
Drainage on Morgan.
Yeah.
I'm just going based on like rankings in the spreadsheet that we
It
just.
comes up year after year.
Yep.
We did put in a grant for the LSA
Yep.
for, it was Morgan, north of Fold. And so that wasn't selected, so we have, we have a concept for replacement of the stormwater for that.
Yeah.
Then we have a concept for replacing stormwater on Morgan, south of Fold as well.
The thing about those is that they're important, but it's okay if it takes like a few years until it gets approved. It's just important for it to
I
keep
think we
going
need
into
to keep
the,
applying, yeah.
to keep applying. Because it's not urgent, I would say like a match is more attractive for like the roof, which is urgent, than something that is important but not like urgent.
I mean, it is urgent if we have a flood. So which one, what grant should we look into to repurpose our LSA Morgan materials?
What was the LSA, the total amount of the Morgan drainage? The amount. Which one? The recent one that we applied for the drainage for Morgan, what was the total amount? I just want to get a sense of whether these would fit.
You want, how about, I'll pull up the Fitzpatrick one.
Okay.
Okay, what about tentatively?
It was over 500,000 though, wasn't it?
It was over 2 million.
2 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the problem, because this was like only 500,000.
Which one are you discussing? I'm sorry, I missed that.
Drainage on Morgan.
No, there was another, but you said which
I said
grant?
the flood mitigation program, but apparently it's not enough money by.
Oh, I see, okay.
It could be done in phases.
Yeah.
Is one thing.
Could it?
Break it down.
Have to be done in phases?
Yeah, I mean, just as we used for phase 2, we had like 3 or 4 grants. So it's like maybe going for different grants as well. Multiple grants to get up to that number as well.
So do we want to try for the flood mitigation program? I mean, we're not,
I would say that at 15%.
that seems
is,
reasonable, yeah.
that you're talking about $5,000 match.
500,000 seems like money well spent to me.
Yeah, that seems like high return.
And we already have
There,
Yeah, we just scale it down.
Yep.
what you might also want to do is just reach out to Susan,
Yep.
because there has been discussions regarding drainage in Morgan. So maybe she could help out with the FEMA related.
Attractive.
Yes.
Okay, good. We have one. Sorry, did we talk about the canal? I.e., like land acquisition, is that something we want to do next year? Access to the canal?
What are you proposing?
Acquiring
what land?
Like, we talked of, for example, near the gas station.
Oh, okay, I see, sorry.
That doesn't feel like a next year thing to me, but.
Like
Yeah.
next.
We could make it
The
one.
thing about that is that there's been the need to reach out and find out if, is it a possibility? Like, do we even know? Like, I would just do the preliminary work to find out first if it's even something that family would consider selling. Because without that knowledge,
That could be a next year thing.
that I would do for as a starting point and then potentially revisit. Because the other thing about if it is on board, then all you do is you get an appraisal and you start to put it in year after year.
Yep.
The various land acquisition, and eventually you get it, but it could take 3 to 5 years.
I mean, I think that would
Why
have a-
delay?
I actually think something like that would have a very strong chance because of how used the canal is, and you're connecting to Main Street at an end where there isn't any other access.
Yeah, you're connecting Main Street, a train station.
And you can't connect from Letchworth to the canal because the homeowners have signs that say private property.
No, you can go from,
Oh, the back of Yardley Commons.
no, well, yeah, you can cut through the commons.
I think
but you
that's-
can go from Letchworth to Canal Street, and then there's the gravel.
Right.
Right,
Exactly.
right. Sorry, I meant Letchworth where it goes over the canal, but yeah, you do have the gravel. You do have the gravel. That's a good
It's like
point.
an unofficial connection.
And I think that this highlights a real shortfall of our last comp plan, is that there's a lot of, like, we want to do this, but no conversations were ever had, in
Right.
to my knowledge, with the property owners to see if that's even something they'd be open to. So I'm hearing that we're interested in this, and that, just like Friends of Lake Afton and having conversations there, we need to.
Well,
start thinking
so I'll
about
say something too on the note that Kim said. I mean, I'm an avid runner, biker. I think I lived in the borough 3 years before I realized you could go down to the end of Canal Street and that wasn't someone's driveway. So even if something like that was marked as like a path to canal.
They put it on, like, you could put on the borough website, public access to the canal is here, here, and here.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Or drop pins on.
Yeah.
As we need to do with lots of things. Okay, sounds like a plan for that. Traffic safety equipment. A lot of people ranked this like between 6 and 10, so pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, we should have like, things like those pedestrian signs and whatever else we need to make crosswalks safe. That needs to be like ongoing. If we need specific grants, it's not that expensive. I mean, we should just apply for them. 20%, I see this one. And the Arley, we've gotten the Arley one before.
Oh, have we?
Yeah, I think that's how we paid for, what did we pay for that? Paid for something with that. The chief would know.
We sent them home.
So, and then like those speed signs, I know like we had one that broke and, you know, they're going to wear out. They don't last forever. So, so I'm saying, yes, we should apply for
Okay.
these and make a list of the things that we need and just put them in.
So kick that to public safety.
That's what I think. I mean,
Yep.
just one.
As long as it's not battery operated, because they keep going bad.
And some of these things are for like the regular equipment, and some of them are to like improve a crosswalk, like adding beacons. Like we talk about, you know, the mid-block, I know there was conversation about it has to be like a survey, but I know about that, and I don't know, maybe there is a way to do it.
Yep, and those
Ken has
are
paint.
ones we can do in-house for sure.
Yeah, what's that?
Ken has paint.
Yeah, Gorilla. Could be. But then there's things like the beacons, and we talk about the Dolington extension. Part of that is so expensive is because of the flashing beacons. So if that could be moved to a separate project, once the sidewalk.
Like if we don't get that grant.
Yeah,
Well,
so
just
you have the
separate
beacon
that
to come
out.
across, then you have a little
Because
cement
there's
pad,
going to be a
then you walk
crosswalk.
on the grass.
Yeah.
So there is going to be a crosswalk no matter what.
And you do it on the cheap.
So you get the beacons.
I mean, to me, those beacons are almost a non-negotiable, even if I would love to get a grant for it. Let me just preface by saying that, but to me, that would be something that I would be willing to have a discussion about using capital reserves for that if we can't get a grant, because I think that is
They're more
essential,
expensive
essential.
than- Yeah, I hear you, but they're more expensive than you'd think they would. You'd think you just put the two things in.
Right, but what I'm saying is let's put
You and
that
I
in as
did it,
many
it would be
grants
cheap.
as possible.
Right, right.
But it's 50,000, right?
And then
for
there's
the-
that crosswalk that you've mentioned a lot of times on South Main, right? And I know that one, that it's like, for some reason, no one ever stops when you want to cross
Which one on South Main?
down, yeah, the one that you use, probably.
At-
Yeah, I don't have a crosswalk.
You don't have it, the one,
Doesn't
the
matter.
first one.
Even if there was, nobody would stop.
Are you talking about the one at Reading where people don't stop?
No, I saw,
Yeah.
I picked Abby from the train station the other day, and the car was like, yeah, it was about to hit somebody.
Yeah, so that may be a beacon, you know, the button with the.
I mean, honestly, Maine and College, I would say, is even one, possibly.
What is the
Sir,
cost,
I think
Lori?
they,
You know, approximately?
well, we looked at Dolington, it was crazy, I mean, I thought these things are
50
cheap
grand,
because they're
right?
Solar.
Isn't it 50 grand?
You'd think.
It's in our estimate.
Yeah. I mean, are they all that expensive, or is that one more expensive because of the complexities of that intersection? And that one
That
also
one's
had a
not
light.
as expensive, the more expensive ones are, that have the mast arms.
But what about just like the two solar, like, you've seen them like in, like,
Well,
Princeton has
with
them,
PennDOT,
two solar things, and
yeah, with PennDOT, the solars, they need to be hardwired.
they won't allow
Right,
battery powered.
yeah,
So they'd rather have like nothing.
yeah.
Seriously, huh?
It's your,
Well,
okay. So that's a big problem, because that makes them much more expensive, because you have to hardwire electricity to them.
Well, I mean, that's part of it, but I mean, it's just the cost and the permitting for it, so.
let me ask you this. Ori, sorry, did I?
No, that's fine.
We've mentioned this in Public Works within our committee. Do you want to open up this can of worms at the meeting tonight about the road take-back for Main Street, or is that too
I
much?
think it's not for tonight, considering
Okay.
the time, but yeah, that's,
But I think that is an option to get around some of
Get
this
around some of the costs.
nonsense.
So you have these notes to take back to public safety on these two that we want to apply next year?
For what, I'm sorry?
Either the Arley, is that how you say it, Arley?
Arley.
Or FCA?
Red light
For,
camera thing.
Do I want to, take them back? Or
so,
say-
like, because typically, aren't those ones that chief has applied for in the past? All right.
I mean, could we pick maybe like 2 crosswalks to try to get beacons on? Like, would that be too much to do tonight?
Pick 2 tonight?
Yeah, or just say there are 2, like 2.
I think we should go
Darlington
based
and one
on
more.
where we've had the most reportable incidents, no?
I don't know if it's.
I don't think we've had that many
I
reportable
think that
incidents.
there's the statistics can only take you so far. You have to
Yeah.
have a qualitative assessment as well. And I think somewhere in the south end and somewhere in the north end makes sense to me in terms
We're
of
talking about beacons at Dolly.
the areas where people are having trouble crossing the street, because the middle, they have like a light that turns red.
Right.
And walks.
Like, for example, I have not reported any of the hundreds of cars that have almost hit me and my family that I've thrown my arms up at. But it's happened hundreds of
That's
times.
a thought.
So which 2?
Well, I would do the Darlington
Terry,
beacon.
who walked the most.
So that we can take it out of that grant
Yeah.
and give us another avenue to get that met. And then whichever one, I'll think on the south.
Reading? Because it's by the train station.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then if we get the green trail
Wait, can you
there.
repeat Kim's taking
Right.
notes? Which 2?
I was about something else I was.
Main and Dolington on the north side of town, and then Main and Reading by the train station.
Right, yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if we get the trail to the train station, acquire the land, that feeds right into that.
Yeah, I'm not really so on board with that, but.
Baby steps.
No cost to the taxpayer.
Okay, Afton Avenue sidewalk, this was not a good grant exercise for that. I don't know why, but it just, people didn't write that down as a match to many things, and I only have the 30% MTF version from PennDOT here for that one. So I think if we decide tonight we want to apply, which I think I know at least 3 people on, potentially 4 people on council really would like to, I think we'd have to go back to the drawing board on a grant match for that.
Well, this is the thinking right now with that one, is to apply for an LSA grant for design, to do a design, to do that phase of it.
Next year, like the November,
The next one.
the next one.
And then potentially, if something else is a match that we discover for design, but to focus on the design aspect of that, because it's so big that it seems like we're going to get into that same problem of not having enough to cover the
Got it.
engineering.
All right, sound good to everyone? Okay. We already kind of talked about crosswalk additions mid-block. I think we're not there yet, right?
That was mine, and it was more of a big picture vision.
EV charging, EV police cars. I don't know that the police force wants to go electric, but this grant is also for hybrid vehicles, and it covers the difference between what a normal vehicle would cost and the hybrid, up to $40,000.
I don't think we're there yet.
I think we already have hybrids, don't we?
Yeah, those Ford Explorers.
No, not in the police
No.
cars. No.
No, the last
Well,
car
they
we
looked
decided
into it.
against that.
I'm not talking
Yeah, we
about
don't have
plug-in
hybrids.
hybrids, I'm talking about.
No, I don't think they have any, do they?
I don't think we have any hybrids on the force.
I think
thought the
last time,
SUV we bought was a hybrid.
I thought that there was an option, and the conclusion at the time was it was cheaper to not have the hybrid. I remember the chief had a whole, kind of breakdown of it, but, those are, I don't know if those incentives will go away, but if there are incentives, sometimes they can make it cheaper than buying.
Okay, sounds like skipping over that one for now. Access to waterfront, one person ranked it 4, somebody ranked it 5, somebody ranked it 7, somebody ranked it 9, somebody ranked it 12, somebody ranked it 16. But there were a lot of grants that were strong matches for this. So I think that I would say keep all of these on our radar for 26, but we kind of have to work out what we're envisioning there a little more, I think. And I think we're just saying like, oh, it'd be nice to have access, but we don't have any idea of like which place we prioritize, what the concept would be.
Some of that will get clarified in the comprehensive plan, maybe.
It's nice to know that these are available though, so.
And some of these things don't even require grants, like our micro park street end idea is just like cleaning it up a little bit and putting a bench. It's like community effort.
Like making it clear that it's open, it's a public space and not some.
Yeah, maybe some signage, a bench, and just clearing out.
Call it a day.
Cool. All right, furnishing for properties that we've newly acquired, such as the Yardley Trailhead and Judy's Garden. I mean, I think we need money for these projects, so, like RERA was no match, $10,000. It's due in April, I feel like that, why not? Right?
Absolutely. There's also, RERA, was that the?
That was one you did. And it goes with C2P2, kind of.
Wasn't there a PICO one that was 100%, not 50%? Maybe I'm mistaken. We had thought, and we didn't do it this year, we had thought the PICO one for the former PICO lot would be like a very good fit and likely for them to say yes, but I thought it was 100% match. Maybe I'm mistaken.
I don't know. Not in this exercise. So does everyone agree we should try for the RERA for 10,000, no match?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And there may also be other, organizations that are not listed here. Organizations, not.
Yeah. So I'll double check on PICO. So we have consensus on anything that's no match on those properties we should apply for, especially if we can do them in-house. All right, and then the last thing we have is the fire hydrant adapters, which I think we're well covered on, with the plan to purchase them need to be replaced. All right.
When I did my research, it wasn't an item on here, but the tot lot, there was one that fit the tot lot, and I put that in the notes.
Yep. I have all
aware
the
of
notes,
it?
and I'm
Okay.
going to consolidate them
Since
and
we're
share
planning
with
to do
all.
that anyway.
Yeah.
We might as well try to get.
Absolutely. All right, anything else on this? So I took notes on what we've decided to move forward with, and I'll send those out. And we can put them in the minutes. Okay. Anything else on this? Do we feel like we need to vote again? I feel like we just kind of did that. We're all aligned on what we're doing next year, right? Okay.
That's great. Great.
All right.
Note the time.
We are now moving into a quick executive session to discuss personnel matters. There will be no vote. Do I have a motion to adjourn into executive? Is there a second? Meeting adjourned at 10:33.